Hey there guys, it's Klay here back with another video. Today I will read chapters 21 to 30 of What If Naruto Was in the MHA verse. More information about the author of the story can be found in the video description. Anyways, I will now begin. Chapter 21. Start. Excitement. Been a while since I've had a girls' day. Mina thought as she sucked up her drink. She was sitting with her female classmates, at least a few of them, since Suyu had rejected the idea on the reason that she had to make lunch and dinner for her siblings today. It was their one day off of the week from school, and while she originally wanted to go on a date with Naruto today, he had actually turned her down. Apparently, today he and his uncle were going to be training together. I wonder what his uncle's quirk is. Mina didn't even know that Naruto's uncle had a strong quirk, at least strong enough to hold his own against the freak of nature that was her training-addicted boyfriend. So here she was, with Ochako, Toru, and Momo as the four of them sat in a family diner. It's a shame Jiro and Suyu are with their families today. It would have been nice to have all the girls together. Toru's excited voice broke Mina from her thoughts, and she looked at the invisible girl, taking a bite of a sandwich. It vanished the second it entered her mouth, so it was amusing just watching her eat. They were all in their pretty casual clothes. Ochako just had a water, and a side of fries in front of her, preferring to snack instead of have a full meal. Strange. So Yaoyorozu, what was it like fighting alongside a pro? Ochako asked, who they believed to be the only person in their group to fight alongside their local celebrity. Sure, Naruto wasn't an actual pro hero, but the fact that he knew All Might personally, combined with how many heroic feats he had under his belt, it was only a matter of time before he became a member of the top 10 heroes himself one day. He had already been labeled as the strongest student in the class, with Momo being labeled as the smartest, and even Todoroki was given a firm number 2 in strength. The three of them had already cemented themselves as the strongest three in the class, with their high scores and powerful quirks. Momo put a finger to her lips. I haven't thought on it, it seemed his mind was somewhere else during that training. He seemed like a good person though, and he was willing to play along with my plans. Momo had been the one who really wanted to get into character. He just went along with it, and with his appearance, it would seem that he was easily more villainous in appearance than she was. Toru snickered. You really don't look like a villain. Toru's sleeves pointed at Momo, who puffed up her red cheeks in embarrassment. She had looked over the footage from her battle, and even she would admit she looked nothing like a villain. Her plan had worked against Zero, but putting a black cape on something, and making them smart didn't a villain make. In retrospect, Naruto with his threatening demeanor had been the better villain. Even the likes of Bakugo in the first battle had played the role of a villain far too easily, and Tenya had tried his hardest to act like a villain. Mina nodded. Speaking of looking like a villain, I think Bakugo has some pretty bad attitude problems. What he did to poor Deku. Mina had heard Ochako start calling him that, and decided it was fitting. Was just wrong. He seemed really angry at the guy for something. She had watched that fight, and Bakugo had just been vicious to Izuku. He had beaten his fellow student to a near pulp. It was only because Ochako had done her part as a hero that allowed them to pass, and the building collapsing because of Bakugo's explosions helped her use her quirk. Said girl shivered. Honestly, Bakugo and Naruto scared her a little. How strong was a person to make All Might shiver like that? With Naruto, come on Deku, get your shit together. Naruto caught Izuku's fist with his hand. He had heard several people in class calling him Deku, and the nickname just stuck with him. Izuku had a black eye and a bloody lip, but he was trying his hardest to land a decent hit on Naruto. He was only able to bring out 7% of one for all, but that much wasn't enough to land a clean hit on Naruto in a straight-up sparring match. 7% hadn't even been enough for him to defeat Bakugo in the battle training, so there was no way it was going to help him against a student who used almost solely hand-to-hand. All Might watched in his shriveled form. He's trying his hardest, but he's thinking too much against Naruto. Against an opponent who fights using instinct, but still has a mind for battle, using just your mind won't be enough. Toshinori thought as he watched his nephew and charge fight. So far, Izuku hadn't even been able to match Naruto use his quirk. The point of this training was for Izuku to land a hit on Naruto, that was it. This wasn't one for all training, this was martial arts training using one for all. Watching the boy, Toshinori could actually see where he was going wrong with his fighting style. He was trying to imitate the All Might fighting style of punches, when his body just wasn't built for lots of upper body martial arts. He needed his own fighting style until his body was capable of using 100% power all over. As it stood, he wasn't a fist fighter. Naruto looked a little annoyed with Izuku. Naruto used 2 fingers and grabbed a lock of Izuku's hair, before he yanked his head down with it. He punched him in the nose and knocked him off of his feet, before he grabbed his ankle and slammed him into the sand. I can't read his moves. It's like he has a dozen different fighting styles, and never sticks to a single way of combat. Izuku, even in the sand, had the wind knocked out of him as Naruto put his hands in his pockets. He liked observing others and how they fought, and used their quirks, but everything he learned from watching Naruto was useless. The second he tried to fight Naruto's current fighting style, Naruto just switched into a different way of fighting and threw him for a loop. When he tried to adjust to the new style, Naruto switched into the old one, or a new one. No matter how much he tried to take control of the battle, Naruto didn't let him, and he had no way of predicting what Naruto was going to do next. "Come on kid, get back up," Toshinori whispered as he encouraged Izuku. This was his successor, he needed to support him right now, not Naruto. "I'm done." Naruto turned and started to walk away. "What? I thought we were supposed to be fighting all day." Izuku jerked up as quickly as he could, and he wobbled to his feet, before he ran at Naruto. Not to punch him, just to ask him why he was giving up. Naruto turned around and placed his palm on Izuku's head, before he pushed him onto his butt, right back in the sand. "You're not ready to train with me. Even if you could use 100% of that power you have. That body of yours isn't the only thing holding you back from making me take you seriously. I'll train with you again, when you understand what you're doing wrong." Naruto was done with Izuku. Toshinori didn't say anything. Izuku was far too predictable, because he thought out all of his moves. He was easy to trick into acting a certain way, and no amount of speed or power would change that right now. He needed to learn how to think on the fly better, and act on instinct more. As it stood, no amount of training with Naruto would help him with that. "With the girls, so what do we talk about now?" Mina asked as they all got their food. They had a full day of fun planned, but right now they were going to sit down, eat, and maybe gossip a little. "Boys?" Toru asked. "I'm not interested, right now, I'm focused on becoming a hero." Momo rejected it. She wasn't going to be trying to get into a relationship with any boys until she had become a pro hero, and had gotten used to that harsh life. A relationship could wait until she was an adult. "You can talk about it, I just won't have much to say." Momo did relent when she saw Ochako blushing, and Mina seemingly uninterested. She was kind of interested in why the most tomboyish of them, Mina, seemed like she didn't care too much about this topic. Like what? Who is the hottest in class, or boys we like? Mina didn't really have much to say. She was in a relationship, and in a couple months, she and Naruto were going to have been dating for a full year. The two of them were having a somewhat rocky patch in their relationship, but they would be out of it soon enough. They both had a lot on their plate right now, so they just weren't spending all the time together that they did when Naruto didn't go to school. She did have opinions on the other boys though. "Oh come on, think about it, we've got a lot of hotties in class. Todoroki, Naruto, and even Denki are all pretty good looking. I would include Bakugo, but his attitude. Everyone could agree there, that with Bakugo's anger issues, he was taken off of any potential boyfriend lists. Of all of the boys in class, the hottest ones had to be Naruto, Todoroki, and Denki, with Kirishima being pretty good looking. There were other good lookers, but those four had to be highest on that list. Toru still planned on asking Naruto out, but not until she had seen more of his personality. "Oh, and I sent some of my hair to the company like you said. They're going to make me invisible tights." Toru sent a thumbs up, an unseen thumbs up, to Momo. She nodded. "In all honesty, the fact you only wore gloves and boots for a costume was very indecent. Even if nobody could see you. Making a young girl run around mostly naked was just horrible, it didn't matter if she was invisible. It wasn't appropriate, and it wasn't very smart when considering Toru was going to be a hero, and thus would have to work in both the hot and cold. It was just unhealthy for her to be naked in the winter months. You're oddly silent, considering you're very enthusiastic," Momo pointed out, looking right at Mina. The girl smiled awkwardly. "Just been in thought. Naruto's with his uncle today, but knowing him, he's going to get into trouble somehow." Mina mentioned in passing, without meaning to. She got looks from the girls. What? Mina asked with a confused look. What? You're pretty concerned for him, considering you barely know him. Ochako didn't want to sound rude, but she had never really seen Mina and Naruto interact with each other. The only one she had really seen Naruto talk with was Momo, Toru, and Kirishima. He hadn't really talked to anyone else. He did talk to Mina a little. Do you like him? Ochako asked with a smile. Toru huffed. Hey, I called dibs. You called dibs. On the boy I've been dating for nearly a year. Naruto and I eat lunch together on the roof, and we don't sit close together in class. Also, my boyfriend. Mina sent a pointed look to Toru, who had the decency to shrink back into her seat. She didn't realize Naruto was taken, and she had made a fool of herself for trying to flirt with him during class the last few days. Is too oblivious to notice a girl's feelings, so I was just going to let you confess your feelings, and let him be the one to let you down gently. Seriously girl, I've been waiting for you to ask him out, so I could tease Naruto about it. Mina pointed out with deadpan face. She wasn't angry at Toru in the slightest, a little annoyed, but Toru was honestly innocent of any crime. As long as it doesn't interfere with your studies, I have no problem with it. Just try and think of your future before making rash choices. Momo didn't really care either way. She did mentally make note of the fact that she too hadn't really seen Naruto make any romantic advances on his own girlfriend. Also, try not to, boom asterisk, what was that? In the streets, a villain just appeared. We need to go and find a hero. Ochako shouted as the dinner they were in shook. They all stood up and looked out the window, seeing traffic stop as a villain with what looked like bombs growing out of his body, screaming in pain and throwing his bombs everywhere. A real villain. Momo looked in surprise, not accepting this today. Mina looked surprised. This only happened to her when Naruto was, it's Foxman. Toru corrected herself when she saw Naruto jump in front of a bomb that nearby hit a car, and take the explosion with his body. He rushed towards the next bomb thrown, and tossed it up into the air, before he used his body again to shield a small group of businessmen. He was in his two-tail form to give him the size to block the explosions, but they all knew it was him now. Is around. Seriously. Mina should have known Naruto was somewhere close by if there was a villain that was attacking out of nowhere. We should help him. Ochako actually got ready to go outside and help. She was stopped by Momo though, as they watched Naruto rush towards the villain as he threw two bombs at the side time. Naruto grabbed both of them from the air, and tossed them high up where they could explode safely. Why are you stopping me? He could get really hurt. Ochako didn't want her classmate hurt, even if she was a little scared of him. Let's help evacuate the civilians. Momo pointed to all of the people Naruto was using his body to shield. They were just students, but they could still help direct people to evacuate. With Naruto, seriously, I was just here to get lunch. This guy has a black tongue, is this a trigger addict? Naruto wondered as he looked at the guy laughing his head off in pain, a strange situation if there ever was one. Naruto had taken explosions on his arms and chest. There are too much people around. Naruto would have already had this taken care of, but the guy just kept throwing bombs at civilians when Naruto was about to knock him out. This situation sucked. Thankfully, the guy only had 3 bombs left growing out of his arms, and he grabbed 2 of them. He threw them in opposite directions, so Naruto rushed towards one, grabbed it, and threw it up as he jumped towards the second one and landed on top of it. When it exploded, and he was sent flying into a car, a large bloody mark across his chest. That hurt. Ha 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 ha. Time for the boom boom. The man ripped his shirt off, and showed his chest was a bomb. He didn't just grow bombs from his arms, he was a living, breathing, suicide bomb. Naruto increased his size, crushed the car he was above, nobody was in it anymore, and he kept growing until he was at his current limit. He grabbed the man, and pulled him into his chest. Naruto curled up and wrapped his tails around himself, holding the man as close to his chest as he was able. He didn't know how powerful this explosion was going to be, but it was going to hurt. Boom, it hurt. A lot. Naruto was sent flying into the side of a building, transforming back into his normal form, his chest and arms now completely bloodied by the explosion he just contained. The bomber was still alive, his body immune to his own explosions, but his body was super skinny as he used up all of his body's nutrients, leaving him in a severely malnourished state. Ooh, fuck. That's the news. Naruto fell out of the building, and landed face first on the sidewalk. He glanced around, and he was surprised when there was nobody around to see him untransformed. Naruto groaned in pain as he forced himself to transform back into his one-tail state, and got back up. As thankful as he was nobody saw him, he needed to get out of here before other heroes, the police, or the news arrived. That sucked. So much. Asshole kept throwing bombs at innocents. Naruto hated when villains played dirty like that. Oh well, everyone was safe now. Naruto wobbled into an alley out of view. He then passed out. Chapter 21. End. Chapter 22. Start. Well, Naruto was in a pickle. Waking up was fine and dandy, considering almost anyone else who had took explosions to the chest and arms would have been dead. He still felt a massive amount of pain in his chest and arms, and he couldn't move much either. Actually, he couldn't move at all. He flexed his arm, and he felt something tying both of his wrists down. His ankles were in a similar situation, and he had something thin wrapped around his neck. Na-chan, how happy you woke up. ... Who are you? Naruto looked at the girl who walked in. He didn't recognize her off of the top of his head, but she seemed a little familiar to him. The frizzy bun hair, the blonde hair, and yellow eyes, and those fangs. Of course, he recognized her clothes more than anything. She was wearing a super baggy orange hoodie, that was literally just like the one that he wore. She had it half unzipped like his, showing her moderately impressive cleavage. She wore super baggy black pants, that was only held onto her body with a tight belt, and the legs were rolled up to allow her to walk. She was literally wearing his clothes, and he meant literally. He could smell himself on those clothes. She stole his clothes. Oh Na-chan, don't you remember, I'm Himiko Toga. Our love started in that alley, and I just couldn't resist taking you. Himiko spoke with a love-struck voice. Naruto deadpanned. First, I'm going to transform, break out of these bonds. Second, I'm going to rip my clothes off of you. Finally, I'm going to beat you up and drop you off at the police station. Naruto told her his step-by-step plan for what was about to happen to her. Also, Naruto glanced down, and saw he was wearing pants still. His chest and arms were bandaged up, so she must have broken into his house and stolen his clothes. He shivered. That was even worse than if she just stripped him naked of his clothes. Sounds fun. Himiko jumped onto the bed with Naruto, and he yelped in pain when she landed on his chest. She poked his neck, where something was wrapped around it. If you transform though, you're going to slit your handsome throat. Himiko pointed to the iron fibers that were wrapped around his neck. Durable enough to not snap when he transformed, meaning that if he upped his size, he would be slitting his throat in the process. Naruto frowned, and he glanced at the ropes that were tied around his wrists. They weren't made of the same material, but they didn't have to be. The thread around his neck was good enough to keep him restrained. Who was this freak? So you have me here. What do you want? Naruto asked her as he tried to think of a way to get out of here. Wherever here was, he was going to escape, and take this girl down when he escaped. Himiko traced the bandages on his chest. First, going to let you heal. Then I'm going to stab you. When I saw you bloody that day, I just had to fall in love. And I've been following you ever since. Learning about you, watching your movements. Her face twisted as a sick glee overcame her features. Her cheeks turned bright pink as she remembered what she had done, the things she had gotten to do in her pursuit of love. Watching you, learning to imitate you, taking your clothes, making myself dress like you, pretend to be you. Himiko exclaimed to him as she scooted down so that she was sitting on his abs. She was twitching and squirming like a schoolgirl with a crush, and was more than happy to explain everything to him. ... Sadly, now he remembered her. No windows. One door. And this room smells like blood. There is no escape, honey. I'm going to keep you here, but don't worry, you'll still have a social life. I'll go to school for you, as you. I'll break up with that sexy girl you like. So. Himiko laid down on top of him so that she was looking at him eye to eye. She pushed her finger up against his wounds, and opened them up so that he started to bleed again. Her smile widened even further, taking a far more perverse look to it as she lowered herself further on him, liking his bleeding chest. The fuck? Stay calm. Surely, Mina will notice. Somebody will notice this girl isn't me. Naruto watched as she got off of him. She rolled off of the bed and onto the floor, before she hit the ground. He couldn't see her, but when she stood up, she looked just like he did. Down to the last detail, she was his exact clone. You can turn into people like drinking their blood. Naruto pointed out. That would explain the fangs, to be honest. He was disturbed when his voice came out as a response, out of a body that looked just like his. Her wearing his clothes just made it even worse. Don't worry, we're just one step closer to becoming one person. I love you so much, Na-chan, and soon, we'll become one forever. Next day, Yue, my boy Kirishima. Sorry I couldn't hang with you yesterday, I was with my uncle. Himiko shouted as she ran over to Kirishima. She high-fived Kirishima like it was nothing, before the two of them pro-fisted. He gave her a thumbs up. Dude, saw the news, you were awesome. The way you took that explosion, and saved everyone was awesome. So manly. Kirishima punched Himiko in the arm, and she wrapped her arm around his shoulder. They bumped fists again. Man, you must be feeling great, you're so energetic this morning. Kirishima hadn't seen Naruto this excited for school. Naruto. Toru jumped on Himiko's back and started to poke the whisker marks on her face. Toru? Himiko asked with Naruto's confusion. She knew his expressions down to every last detail, she had been watching him for a while now. I wanted to ask you on a date, but because you're with Mina, let's just stay friends. Toru was completely open with it. She was going to respect her friend by not being attracted to her boyfriend. She didn't have feelings for Naruto anyway, she just wanted to date him to see if any feelings developed. Himiko smiled. Let's stay friends, sounds like a plan. Himiko just let Toru keep poking her, and moments later the invisible girl got off on her own. Mina showed up and grabbed a hold of Naruto's hand. Morning Naruto. Mina leaned up to try and give him a kiss, but she blinked in shock when Himiko jerked out of her grip and walked several steps forward. She saw that annoyed look on her boyfriend's features. Well, somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Mina shrugged her shoulders and smiled moments later. Well, Grumpy, no kisses for you today then. Himiko turned. We're done. I don't want to be with you anymore, not after what you did. Himiko even imitated Naruto's serious voice too well. What did she do? Toru and Kirishima looked at Mina, who was just stunned with wide eyes. She could tell when Naruto was being serious, and he wasn't joking around with her. She watched as Himiko made a show of storming off. Mina was frozen with wide eyes, she took a hesitant forward, but she stopped and placed her hand on her arm. You're not Naruto. Kirishima looked at Naruto with a frown. Himiko froze when she was outed already, surprised. Now that I think about it, I didn't feel any heart when you greeted me. Kirishima proclaimed with a bold step forward. Himiko smiled. Such good friends Naruto had. What do you mean? This has to be Naruto. It's not like somebody can just take his shape and... Ah, Toru realized what this meant. Several other students were listening in, though they didn't know what was going on, and just passed by them. A couple of students in their class joined in though. What's going on? Shoji asked as he joined them, since they were making a scene. Naruto took an explosion to the chest. An explosion that the news reported left him in visibly dire condition. Mina remembered that she had evacuated civilians, and didn't see what happened in person. But when she watched the news, she remembered seeing Naruto in his giant fox form heavily injured. Kirishima caught on, and grabbed Himiko by the collar, not caring that he was making a scene. Where's my best friend, you bastard? Kirishima roared, and the others got into a battle stance when there was a laugh. It wasn't Naruto's voice anymore. A girl? Shoji asked in surprise when he heard a soft voice. Part of the disguise had come undone, and half of Naruto's face turned into a girl's face. A girl none of them recognized, to be honest. She was grinning. Such good friends. And I'm Naruto, so don't I have such great friends? Don't worry, my love is safe. He's injured, and when he's better, I'm going to cut him some more, make him even more handsome. Himiko was punched in the face by Mina, not surprising, and knocked out of Kirishima's grip. She had angry tears in her eyes. Kirishima grinned and got ready for a fight. They all turned to face the impersonator. She was gone. Somehow in the second that they looked away, she was gone again. They didn't know how she did it, but even looking around they couldn't find any trace of her. They all looked around, trying to find any trace of her, but nothing. Mina actually screamed in anger, actual anger, when she realized that now she knew Naruto was missing, and the only person who knew where he was and had him, had vanished right under their noses. She wasn't the only angry one, Kirishima and Toru were pretty angry too. They had to find Naruto. Chapter 22. End. Chapter 23. Start. Something was off. Shota looked at his classroom, and right away, something was extremely off about it. He glanced around, before he noticed that several of his students were not in their seats. Actually, it wasn't just that they were in their seats, it seemed they were gone altogether. He saw that Mina, Kirishima, Shoji, Toru, and Naruto were all not in their seats, which was odd that so many students were absent at the same time. Even worse considering that some of them were friends, and this would mean they were skipping school to hang out. If their reasons aren't good for this, I'll expel all of them. Shota would tell All Might about this, but he wasn't going to go out of his way to track down a classroom of skipping teenagers. They'd better be able to explain this. With Naruto, you're a monster. You didn't even break that Kit Kat. You just took a bite out of the whole damn bar. Naruto moved his head around so that she wouldn't feed him her second-hand chocolate. She was in his clothes again, laying down next to him, and trying to feed him. Of course, he would rather starve than get an indirect or direct kiss from this psychotic bitch. She had a knife in her other hand, drawing crude lines down his arms, leaving thin cuts that just barely bled. She was sure enjoying herself, and she rolled on top of him and smiled. When he got out of here, he was going to beat the shit out of this girl. Oh, don't be that way. You have to eat to keep your strength up. If I want to suck your blood, you need to not die, so you got to keep that strength up. Himiko tried to sound cute. She was cute, but Naruto wasn't going to think it after what she did to him. He jerked his forehead forward, and smashed his head into her nose. She yelped in pain and rolled off of the bed with a hard thump, slamming into the dresser on the way down. Naruto smirked at his small victory. He wasn't going to make it easy for her to have her fun with him. He frowned though when she hung over the side of the bed with a bleeding nose and a wide smile. She was licking her own blood as it went over her lips, having actually enjoyed his violence against her. She enjoyed pain, she enjoyed pleasure, she enjoyed hurting and being hurt. He didn't know how to handle her, other than beat her within an inch of her life and leave her to rot in prison. Honestly, that was his only answer for dealing with her. With the Naruto rescue squad, hours later. This is the scene of the crime yesterday. Kirishima whispered as they looked around the busy streets, that were busy once more. There was a construction crew that was filling in the holes blasted in the road from the villain fight. There were brown spots on the side of the building, spots that were dried up blood. Kirishima was worried for his friend, but he had to admire how far Naruto went to save lives. He had taken a super powerful explosion and contained it with his own body, which was the height of manly. This was their only place where they could start looking for Naruto, the place where he was last seen. Shoji looked at blood marks dried up and on the ground. They went into the alley nearby, but after that, it was clear that Naruto had collapsed. The blood marks continued from there, so he placed a hand on his chin and thought, he's gotta be hurt really bad. Mina slapped her cheeks as hard as she could to try and stay calm. Her pink cheeks turning bright red from her abusing them, but she was able to try and stay calm because of it. Toru was looking in the trash cans in the alley for any clue. Shoji, can you make dog noses with your quirk, and sniff Naruto out? Kirishima asked his classmate. Shoji shook his head. I'm limited to making copies of my own body parts. While I can make multiple eyes and ears to give myself better range, I can't modify the nose I would make to make it smell better than my own. Shoji explained his quirk, even making an eye come from one of his arms. If Naruto was here, he could become a fox and track. Toru stopped when she realized that if Naruto was with them, they wouldn't be doing this in the first place. Mina looked upset at the reminder, but she got her phone out and called Naruto's phone. Toru reached into the trash and pulled out Naruto's phone, and she answered the call. So, we can't track him by phone signal. Shoji whispered as he started to follow the trail of blood. He took the lead, with Kirishima following behind him closely. He had both of his arms raised up, ready to fight if the girl appeared. We should have contacted a hero. Shoji pointed out with his mask shifting and showing he might be frowning underneath. Mina shook her head, and so did Toru. Naruto would get in trouble for doing illegal hero work if they told a teacher about it, and they were taken to the crime scene. The only heroes that they could contact about this would have to be heroes that Naruto was personally close to, those who knew he helped people in need. Where were you two when Naruto got kidnapped? Kirishima didn't want to come off as accusing, but it needed to be asked. They were here when it went down. I was helping get people out of the area. When the fight ended, I was a few blocks away. I didn't know Naruto had been hurt until I saw the news. I thought he had just escaped so that he wasn't seen by the news. Toru spoke the absolute truth. Naruto had cemented himself as a hero in the eyes of much of the classroom, so it was easy to see him as somebody who was invincible. That seemed to be further from the truth. Mina just gripped Naruto's phone in her hands. Single quote. I should have helped him. It's Momo's foul. Mina stopped herself. No, it wasn't her fault. She chose to go along with what the group wanted to do, and help evacuate people. She could have went against the group, and helped Naruto fight. Then he might not have gotten so hurt in the first place. If she had thrown some acid at the villain, and hurt him, then maybe Naruto wouldn't have had to protect everyone from the big explosion. It was her fault for not following her instincts, not Momo's fault. The girl had just been doing what a hero would have done, and helped evacuate those who were in need of help. Quote. It's okay, we'll find him. Kirishima held back a little and put a hand on her shoulder. They continued following the blood trail as far as it was going to go, but the further they went, the less Naruto had been bleeding. His wounds having stopped bleeding as time went on. Kirishima pushed his fingers against his cheeks, and pushed his lips into a smile. Come on. Do what Naruto would do right now, and try and smile. Naruto told me that a hero smiles to protect people's hearts, and he told me your smile is his favorite. Kirishima tried to get her to smile again. Mina did smile, and she forced herself to grin widely. She never knew Naruto liked her smile so much. Naruto must talk about her behind her back with Kirishima, and from the looks of it, he said good things about her. I'll show him my brightest smile too. Toru shouted. You do that, Shoji, the blood stops here. Kirishima commented when they were all forced to stop. They didn't have a trail to follow. Let's split up. Kirishima, you go with Toru, and I'll go with Mina. If we find Naruto, we don't do anything until all of us are together. That girl wasn't very big, and her quirk wasn't strength related, so she couldn't have carried Naruto super far. Shoji tried to think about everything that he had seen so far. They needed more of a plan than that though. Wish there was a pro that we could turn to without getting in trouble. Kirishima whispered as he teamed up with Toru. Mina blinked and looked at the phone in her hand. She looked at Kirishima. Quote. Kirishima, Naruto changed his password on his phone, do you know it? Naruto knows some heroes that might help us. Mina pointed out as she gave him Naruto's phone. She didn't want to part with it right away, but Kirishima nodded. 0730. Kirishima typed it in. July the 30th? Is that his birthday or something? Toru wondered out loud, since that sounded like Naruto had picked that number for a reason. Mina took Naruto's phone back, and she found the password a little odd as well, and she felt like she recognized that number. It didn't matter right now though. She looked through Naruto's phone contacts. His uncle wasn't going to be any use here, so she continued scrolling down them. She didn't see All Might's number in Naruto's phone, so Naruto must know that number out of the top of his head. She tried to find a number for a hero that she could trust to help them, but also not get Naruto into a trouble. She found it. Who are you calling? Kirishima asked, not recognizing the name that Naruto had in his contacts. Who the hell was his Ryuko Tatsuma? With Ryuko, thanks for this, we're grateful. Just doing my job, no need to thank me. Ryuko in her hero outfit spoke as she looked down at two police officers. She was in full dragon form, holding two criminals in her hands. She had been called to take care of two villains who had attempted to rob a bank. They had flame quirks, so her scales had been a very good protection against the fire. Not to say her hero clothes didn't have some burns on them. They had put up a fight, and several water quirk heroes were putting out all of the fires that had sprung up. She tossed them into the cop car, back seat, before she transformed back into a human form. She reached down and took her phone out the holder stabbed to her leg. A heroine's work is never done. The cop joked when she turned away and started to walk out of hearing range for those around. It was Naruto, he should be in school right now for starters, so he shouldn't be calling her. Second, today wasn't her day off, and she was on duty. He knew not to call her when she was working. She was going to have to lecture him about time and place for this sort of thing, and make sure that he wasn't slacking off in class. Naruto, this isn't the time, Naruto is in trouble, we need your help. Quote. Mina? Ryuko stopped her lecture when Mina on the other end shouted over her. She was a little surprised Mina was calling her, and she mentally went over those words again. Naruto, in trouble? He's always in trouble. Nothing is new about that. I'm working right now, so when Naruto is done handling the trouble, tell him to call me later. Ryuko had utmost confidence that Naruto could handle whatever situation he was involved in. She had trained the boy herself, and he was stronger than the average pro hero. He could handle himself just fine against most things. She was about to hang up. Naruto was kidnapped, and he might be dying. Tell me everything. Ryuko spoke more harshly than she intended to. This was instantly more serious than she thought it to be. She doubted Mina would say those words lightly unless the situation was really serious. This sounded bad. Yesterday, a villain appeared that used his body as a bomb. Before he could explode, Naruto used his body to contain the explosion. He was really hurt though, and before anyone could find him, he was kidnapped. We've been trying to find him, but his blood trail stopped. Blood trail. Ryuko knew that leaving a blood trail meant that a person had to be bleeding a lot. If Naruto passed out from blood loss, and a villain took him, then he was in real danger. That. Ryuko registered the rest of the story as well. Naruto sacrificed his body to save others, and ended up extremely hurt because of it. That sounded like him. We're in an alley next to where the villain attacked. Please help us. I'm on my way, and you should have contacted me the second you realized Naruto was in danger. I'm going to be talking with all of your teachers about this when this is over with. Ryuko sounded stern. This was something that students shouldn't be dealing with. This was hero work. It was one thing to do hero work when you were forced to, like Naruto usually was. But these students were skipping school to track down their friend. They should have contacted the police, or talked with their pro-hero teachers first thing, and not call a hero when they couldn't find Naruto. Turning into a dragon, Ryuko flew up into the air. With Naruto, come on, you should at least scream a little. You look so angry. Here I am, making you look even sexier. Himiko twisted the knife that she had in Naruto's shoulder. His face was pained, but he was refusing to so much as grunt in pain as he glared at her. She just enjoyed his blood on her face. You twisted little. Naruto stopped when the knife stabbed him again. Himiko got off of him, and grabbed a glass of water. She used a spoon and stirred it up, before she poured it on his wounds. He wanted to shout, "See, I'm taking care of you like a good girlfriend. I'm making you more handsome, and I'm pouring salt water on you to slow the bleeding." Himiko continued to pour salt water on his stab wounds. "I think that's all for today. I stabbed you a lot already, and you're still injured from Mr. Bomb. Let's pick this up again tomorrow?" Himiko told him as she put her knife away. She looked at his bloody body, blew him a kiss. Naruto bit his lip and held back a scream, before he glared at her when she tried to force him to eat again. His stomach was growling, but he kept his mouth shut when she tried to force feed him. "The second I get this wire off my neck, your ass is grass." He was going to kick her ass for this. Chapter 23. End. Chapter 24. Start. Seriously, I would rather die than eat your food, or kiss you. Naruto kept turning his face away from Himiko as she kept trying to lay kisses on him, and he went so far as it nearly break his own neck avoiding her. He wasn't going to allow this twisted girl to kiss him, even if he didn't have a girlfriend. She was just fawning over him at the moment, since she had stabbed him too much for the day. Unable to stab him anymore, she was forced to show her affections the somewhat normal way. Somewhat, because he was still tied down, and covered in stab wounds, and she was rubbing herself on his blood. "Oh, don't be like that, nobody is coming, so it's just us here. In our own little world. See, doesn't this make life easier? This world is so cold and unforgiving, but like this, everything is simple. We never have to worry about talking to other people. If you let me take care of you forever, then we can live in this bloody bliss." Himiko spoke as she tried to kiss him. Naruto gripped the pillow with his teeth, before he swung his neck and knocked her face away from his with it. She giggled at his resistance, which pissed him off even more. He sighed, before he grinned. His body started to grow as it stared her down. He kept his transformation as slow as possible so that he didn't slit his own throat instantly. "I would rather die. Stop. Don't do that. I don't want you to die." Himiko grabbed the lamp and slammed it into the side of his head to try and make him stop transforming. His transformation reverted, and his head was turned to the side. Blood coming from his forehead, a piece of shattered glass stuck. Himiko was breathing heavily, her cheeks red with frustration over what Naruto had just attempted to do. "The world will never be an easy place," Naruto told her with a heavy grin. "Even more so for those of us with Quirk's people label as evil." Naruto saw her turn her widened eyes to look at him. She wanted the world to be simple and easy? If she wanted to play this perverse game of house with him, then he was going to be the man of this house, and tell her some unpleasant truths. I want the world to be easy, and I'm going to make it easy. Himiko denied his statements as harshly as she could. She was delusional. The day I was born, both my parents, my little brother, and my little sister both died. My mother, Kushina Uzumaki, lost control of her quirk in the middle of the hospital and killed people. She lost control, and nobody knows why, but she transformed and crushed half of the hospital. My father used his quirk and tried to save everyone. The first and only time my father held me, was to give me to my uncle, before he went to try and calm my mother down. Naruto started to tell Himiko everything. He was going to break this little illusion that she could make the world an easy place by avoiding everything around her, and becoming obsessed with a twisted love. Stop. She killed him in her rage. His body was cut in two, and with the last of his strength, he teleported to my mother's Hoshi no Tama. And he used the last of his strength to break it. Just like the 9 tails in mythology, when those with the monster fox manifest their quirk, the first thing they do is spit out a small ball, and when it breaks, Naruto explained, and Himiko had to cover her ears to try and avoid hearing his words. She didn't want to hear it, she couldn't hear it. I can't hear you. Yes you fucking can. We die. My mother killed my father, and my father didn't want to see her become a monster, so he used the last of his strength to kill her too. My birthday is the day I lost everything. Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, Menma Uzumaki, and Naruko Uzumaki. I lost my entire family, because this world is not an easy place. Naruto screamed at her at the top of his lungs. He forced her to listen to him, because he was going to break her. If he couldn't move his body, he would move his mouth, and he would break his twisted world view with words if he had to. No. My quirk is Monster Fox. If I ever lose control, I could kill everyone I love. My quirk is a quirk that is stained in blood, and every day I have to try harder than everyone around me to not give in. Everyone who remembers what my mother could do, looks at me with eyes that treat me like a ticking time bomb. Life is hard, but as humans, it's our job to face this cruel world with everything we have. Even as she screamed, Naruto just shouted at the top of his lungs to make sure that she was able to hear him. With her mental state, this had to be devastating to her. She curled up into a ball and held her head in her hands. She looked towards Naruto, hoping he would take back his words and comfort her. When he didn't, she rubbed her arms together. You're lying. This is just a lover's spat. We had to have one eventually. Himiko smiled as she found a way to justify Naruto's statements in her mind as wrong. She was still breathing heavily, and her cheeks were flushed. Outside the door, oh my god. Kirishima covered his mouth, tears in his eyes as he heard what had been said. With Ryuko's nose in her dragon form, locating Naruto had been easy, and they had been able to sneak into the abandoned building without being heard thanks to Toru going ahead of them and pointing out all of the traps. They had been able to sneak around undetected, and just as they located the room Naruto was in, they heard his voice. His strength is unreal. Shoji couldn't feel anything but respect for Naruto after hearing about the day of his birth. Hey, your mother killed your siblings in an uncontrollable rage, and then she fatally wounded your father. But don't worry, with his last breath, your father killed your mother to stop her rampage. Mina looked at Ryuko, who nodded. She knew all of this. If I ever lose control like mom, are you going to kill me? Now isn't the time to get distracted by bad memories. Ryuko had started to train Naruto in controlling his quirk, because if he gained control, she would never have to do what was asked of her. It was way Naruto was introduced to all of the strongest fighting members of the top 10. They had been told by the government that if Naruto ever lost control and killed a person, they were supposed to put him down. Mina placed her finger against the lock on the door, and made a little acid so that she could burn through it as silently as she could. She was crying like everything, she was biting her free hand to keep from bawling. Naruto never told her any of this. Toru, butt naked and invisible, slipped through the door as she quickly and quietly opened the door. Himiko reacted out of instinct, and threw a knife towards the door. Toru let out a shout of pain as the knife stabbed her in the shin. Toru dropped to the ground, the knife still stuck in her. Stop what you're doing right now. Ryuko rushed through the door and stood in front of the students. Himiko reacted as quickly as she could, visibly nervous as she stood before a pro hero from the top 10. She grabbed one of her knives, and jumped on top of Naruto, placing the knife next to his neck. Hostage situation. You unmanly coward. Kirishima burst into the room with Mina, while Shoji picked up Toru from the ground, pulling the knife from her leg. Thanks. Can you walk? Shoji asked her quietly, and felt her head move in a nod. Setting her down gently, he noticed that he didn't see any blood, so her blood must have been invisible too. Naruto. Naruto, it's going to be okay. I'm here now. Mina called out to Naruto. Kirishima blinked. You monster. You didn't even break the Kit Kat bar, you just took a damn bite out of it. Kirishima looked around and saw the chocolate she had tried to force Naruto to eat. He saw that she had taken a bite out of the entire bar. Naruto pointed his fingers at Kirishima. That's what I said. Naruto liked having somebody agree with him on this. His emotional outburst over now that his friends were here to save him. Are you okay, Toru? Naruto asked Toru, having seen her get stabbed, well, the floating knife at least. I'll be okay. He's been stabbed at least 13 times, and he still has damage from the explosions he took. The fact he's still alive is amazing. Ryuko slowly moved her foot into position, to try and rush Himiko before she could use that knife. The girl looked flustered and angry now that they had interrupted her. If you come quietly, then it will be better for you. Ryuko stated. Somebody didn't like that. I'm going to kick your ass. Mina lost her shit when she saw what state Naruto was in. She gathered her most lethal dose of acid that she had ever produced, so lethal that even her own hands felt like they were burning. She threw it at Himiko's shoulder. She wasn't going to kill the girl, and the girl ducked it. When it hit the wall, it created an easily 3-foot wide hole instantly. Himiko actually smiled, and pushed the knife against Naruto's throat closer, reminding Mina what position she was in. I like you a little more now, that was really dangerous. Having somebody try and kill her had actually put Himiko's mind at ease, now able to see everything more calmly than before. Kirishima looked at the wire wrapped around Naruto's neck, stopping him from transforming. He glanced at Shoji, who was silent, and looked where Toru might be. God, Mina, you nearly hit me with that. Naruto shouted louder than he needed to. Get the hint, Mina. Seems like this is going to have to continue later. Our love will go on, Naruto, some other day. Himiko looked down at Naruto. She looked at the small hole in the wall, her only real escape now. Kirishima nudged Mina's side, and made a point of looking at Naruto's neck. Ryuko was unable to transform in such a cramped room, and Toru couldn't walk, while Shoji's quirk wasn't going to help here. Mina was the only person who had any power over long range right now. I can't. Mina whispered back to him. She couldn't hit Naruto. Mina, I'm telling you, I'm already going to be in for a long visit to Recovery Girl. Trust me, I can handle it. Naruto snapped at Mina. If she didn't hurry, Himiko was going to get away. What? Ryuko was a little confused, until Mina gathered acid again and threw it at Himiko. The girl jumped towards the hole in the wall, the acid coming missing her. Everyone watched as Naruto's chest and the side of his neck were splashed with acid. I made it as weak as I could. Mina called out to him. Naruto transformed, his neck snapping the weakened wire on his neck. Naruto used his strength to snap the ropes holding him down, and he grabbed Himiko's leg. He ripped her out of the hole in the wall, and threw her at the group. She twisted her body in the air to avoid Ryuko and Shoji as they tried to hit her. The girl was surprisingly skilled at close combat. She slashed Shoji with the knife she had hidden away in her pocket, his shoulder getting a deep cut. She swung the knife at Kirishima, and it broke against his skin. Stay away from my friend. Kirishima slugged her as hard as he could right in her cheek. He wasn't the only one. Don't touch my boyfriend. Mina added her fist to the punishment, and took a shot right at Himiko's stomach. She was knocked onto the floor, her eyes rolled up into her head. Naruto forced himself to stand up out of the bed. Nope. I've got you. Ryuko gently spoke as she held him up with her body. Shoji and Kirishima went to Naruto, and they each took an arm, and wrapped it around their shoulders to help him stand. Now, take him to Recovery Girl at UA. I'm going to have a word with your teachers about this after I've taken this girl into custody. Ryuko didn't praise any of them for this. She wasn't allowed to praise them for what they were doing. She didn't even praise Naruto when he did illegal hero work. At least while she was on duty. Operation. Rescue Naruto. Success. Chapter 24. End. Chapter 25. So, instead of telling your teachers, a highly trained staff of pro heroes, you four decided to go off on your own to save a kidnapped friend? Shota's lectures had nearly ended, but he was staring down at his students with a rather pissed-off expression. It was after school, they had been literally gone the entire school day, and surprise, surprise, they were back in need of healing. Toru had a stab wound on her leg. Shoji had one on his shoulder. Mina had melted the skin off of her own hands partially, and Naruto had to be carried to Recovery Girl for emergency treatments just to begin his extensive damages. It had been hard to tell where the injuries started, and where they ended. Not to mention, he was so low on blood, he wasn't even able to stand on his own. Mina and Kirishima were somewhat understandable, since Naruto was their friend before they attended UA, so they could have gotten pulled by their emotions, but Toru and Shoji going along with it just made matters worse. Part of their punishment was that, since none of their wounds were life-threatening, they couldn't be healed by Recovery Girl for a full day. They would have to wait until tomorrow before class started, before they would be healed of their wounds. The other part was the long lecture they were being put through by each and every teacher that they learned from. All of the teachers whose classes were skipped had words to say to them, but they weren't going to be expelled for this, their first offense against the school rules. I'll accept any punishment. Just don't punishment Naruto. Kirishima didn't want his friend to get punished for missing school. It would seem that Ryuko had left out the bit in the story about Naruto doing illegal hero work. Since that didn't have anything to do with why they missed school, she only reported the actions that directly led to why the five of them had been missing school. Shota sighed. Ow. Ow. Caesar on my leg sucks. Toru thought, since she and everyone had been forced to sit Caesar the entire time they were being lectured. This was punishment in its own right, to be treated like this while injured. She didn't say it out loud, for fear of a worse punishment though. Shoji just nodded in silence. Shota raised an eyebrow. He was kidnapped and tortured, his reason for missing school is acceptable, and punishing him further would be cruel. Not to mention he is in for a long recovery. Recovery Girl's powers rely on the stamina others have. Nobody has enough stamina to be fully healed from that and remaining standing. Shota spoke, and he didn't even get to finish before life proved him with proof. Naruto was walking with a bowl of ramen in his hands. Recovery Girl was walking next to him, hitting him on the back of his head with her cane. Everyone looked at them. The wounds on Naruto's arms and face were completely gone, and his pale skin had taken on its peachy color again, showing he was refilled on blood. He was wearing a bright pink shirt and black pants, and he was taking his beating rather well. Mina sighed in relief, happy to see him up and walking so soon. Shota sighed in annoyance, since life found a way to prove him wrong. Naruto, you missed classes today, so your homework is waiting for you in my classroom, on your desk. Seeing as you're doing well again, I expect it to be done by tomorrow. Shota mentioned in passing to Naruto as the boy walked by. Naruto looked at the friends who saved him, before he frowned and took a step in front of Shota and looked down at them all. He had something he wanted to say. Quote, I don't know if you heard everything I said back there, but can you please keep it a secret? Naruto asked them with a sorry smile. He had been shouting so loud, there was no way they didn't hear some of it. He didn't want their pity that he lost his family on his birthday, and he didn't want them questioning him on it either. He had never intended to tell any of them, not even Kirishima or Mina, about that. The only reason he told Himiko was so that he could try and break her of her delusions of an easy world and a simple life. Naruto finished up the ramen bowl he was eating, before he gave it back to Recovery Girl so that he could bow to them. Thank you. You guys were my heroes today. Naruto wasn't used to being formal about anything, it wasn't in his nature, but this was important. They risked so much to help him, it would be wrong if he just said, thanks, in his usual laid-back way. He needed to show just how truly thankful he was. Kirishima was glared at by Shota, because he almost spoke. His words were cut in his throat, and he just nodded his head and gave Naruto a thumbs up. Nobody was allowed to say anything. Come on Naruto, your uncle is worried about you. You better go home soon, or he'll worry himself to death. Recovery Girl was done lecturing Naruto for the day, but there was still one person who needed to speak with Naruto. This was going to be unpleasant. Later, Naruto, you're okay. This is super unpleasant. Naruto was crushed when Toshinori, All Might form, wrapped his arms around Naruto and squeezed him. The massive man was crying tears of relief that his only family was okay. Naruto winced when he felt something crack. Even with healing, his body was still weakened by his experience until he had time to really recover. He just took the pain, and gave Toshinori a pat on the back. "Stop crying, you big baby, I'm fine." Naruto pushed his uncle off, but the worried look didn't end when his body was examined. "I'm fine now." Toshinori took his true form, and rubbed his eyes. He had been so worried. "When you didn't come home last night, I thought you just pushed yourself too hard, and passed out in the woods. When you didn't come to school the next day, I was so worried about you, and when they carried you in half dead." Toshinori couldn't help but remember Minato. Now though, he was also imagining his own master Nana also bruised and beaten. Everyone he loved who was related to Naruto passed by in his mind, and it was just horrible for him. You're okay?" Toshinori asked Naruto again, not finishing what he was going to say. Naruto put on a bright smile. "Don't worry about me, I'm here, so everything is alright." Naruto spoke genuinely. Toshinori smiled too, before he frowned. "I'm moving you into the UA dorms tomorrow. I'm not supposed to tell you, but news about you getting kidnapped traveled. Other parents are freaking out about their children. So we're going to be moving students from the hero courses into dorms to try and help ease parents." Toshinori told Naruto anyway. Somehow, the news had leaked that a UA student had gotten kidnapped and tortured. The exact details of the leak were unknown. But it was assumed that somebody in the police department that Ryuko talked to, spoke with a news reporter. Parents were freaking out, and their trust in UA had dropped a little, so they were trying to win back the trust of the parents. Naruto blinked, before he nodded. No doubt teachers were going to be asking parents for permission to allow their children to move into the dorms on the next day off from school. And since Naruto's uncle was his legal guardian, there was no need to worry about getting permission. "I'll start packing then." Naruto didn't mind moving into the school for now. "You're okay?" "I'm alright. Being a hero is dangerous, this is just part of the job." Naruto told his uncle with a thumbs up, going into his room as he tried to calm his uncle again. When he closed the door behind him, Naruto let loose a small sigh. He was okay, physically, but this event had forced him to think about things he didn't like. Instead of starting packing like he said, Naruto went towards his closet. Opening it, Naruto leaned down and looked at a small safe on the floor. Entering in the code, Naruto opened it and revealed a small box. Naruto took the box and took out his phone, before he wrote out a text, and he deleted it. Naruto looked at the box in his hands again, before he opened it up. It was a small white ball, small enough to fit into the palm of his hand. It had a faint glow to it, and it gently hummed in his hand. Naruto hadn't had it in his hands in years, not since he had first developed his quirk. He had always kept it safe and quiet in his personal safe. His uncle had told him what it was when he first developed his quirk, and that if it was ever destroyed he would die with it. Yet, it was also the key to unlocking the secret abilities of his own quirk, the double-edged sword of his quirk. Telling Himiko about what happened to his parents, it reminded him about his own. Getting his phone again, he rewrote the text he wanted to send to Mina earlier, and tried it again. Not finding the right way to word it though, Naruto deleted it and wrote it again, and again, and again, and again. No matter how many times he rewrote it, he just couldn't find the right words he wanted to use. In the end, Naruto just sighed to himself and reboxed his Hoshi no Tama back in its box, and put it into his safe again. He had packing to do. Chapter 25. End. Chapter 26. Start. Tired. Waking up at 1 am in the morning to move into the dorms, after having no real sleep since his kidnapping, and being forced to go through an extremely stamina-draining thing such as recovery girl healing had taken a lot out of him. So, practically the second Shota had gotten into class for the morning and called attendance, Naruto's head hit the desk and he went to sleep. Since the other students weren't going to learn that they were going to be asked, not forced, to move into the dorms during the weekend, Naruto was just going to go along with everything quietly until then. This sucks. Got detention with Aizawa this afternoon. Naruto looks tired as hell. Kirishima glanced back at Naruto and grinned. He was just happy Naruto was safe with them. Z's. Single quote ... I'll let it slide this time. But next time, he's getting a week's worth of detentions for that. Shota had noticed Naruto sleeping as well, but instead of let this get in the way of class, he could sympathize with Naruto's need for sleep after his long few days he's had. He would hate to have to wake Naruto up, just as much as he would hate it if somebody woke him up from a nice nap. Thankfully, Naruto put his homework on his desk, already finished, and he had a recorder next to his head, to record the day's lesson, so Naruto actually seemed pretty well prepared to learn while sleeping. He would allow the sleep this one time. 5 minutes later, Naruto Uzumaki 7 votes, Momo Yororozu 2 votes. I'm not waking him up to tell him he's class president. Kirishima raised his hands up in surrender. He wasn't stepping on that landmine, no matter what anyone said to him. Last time he woke up a tired Naruto, he got punched in the face for it. Naruto's first response to getting rudely woken up was to hit whatever woke him up. Anyone who had seen it happen knew this much. Somebody had to wake Naruto up and tell him the news, before the lunch bell rang. Nope. Mina crossed her arms with a grin. She had been there when Kirishima got punched, and it had been hilarious. It was Mina and Kirishima's reactions to waking Naruto that got the rest of the class pale and sweating over the idea of what was going to happen to them. Everyone also remembered how Naruto treated All Might, and suddenly, even Bakugo didn't feel like being the one to wake Naruto up. Vice President, if you will. Shota was having none of their irrational fear, so he ordered Momo to take care of it. If she was going to be the vice president, then she was going to need to work with Naruto a lot to make the class run smoothly for the teachers. The girl nodded her head and started to walk towards Naruto, placing her hand on top of his shoulder. Kirishima and Mina winced, waiting for the punch that Momo was going to get for it. Naruto just groaned and rolled his head to the side, opening a single eye to look at her. She froze. Oh, Momo. What you want? Naruto yawned and sat back up. She pointed at the chalkboard. You are the class president and I'm the vice president. We were voted by the class, so I hope to get along. What the hell, Naruto? When I woke you up, you punched me out of a window. Kirishima felt a little pissed, so Naruto stood up and walked up to the front of class with Momo. Usually, class president was reserved for those who had the potential to be a top hero. Naruto could guess that since everyone knew he did illegal hero work sometimes, that they believed he was the most heroic of them, and deserved the position. He gestured to Momo. You woke me up by coming into my room, and screaming at me. Of course I'm going to hit you. Anyway, I don't want it. You, glasses. Tenya, right? You look like you followed the rules. Class president is yours. Naruto went back to his seat after giving away his position. He left Tenya in shock when he was just given such an important position. Naruto's head touched the table again, and he was out like a light. For 5 seconds. Thank you so much. I will do my best to shut up. Naruto shouted as he snapped awake again, punched Tenya across the classroom, and out of the window, before he slumped his head on the desk again. Funny enough, Tokoyama had opened the window just as Naruto punched Tenya out of it. He had enough sense to do it the second the glasses boy had started to scream at Naruto his thanks. Kirishima felt vindicated. Lunch, dude. That's gross, and I'm surprised you're joining us, Shoji. Kirishima saw Shoji drinking an energy drink, no lunch, through his mask. Sitting at their small lunch table now was Toru, Mina, Naruto, Kirishima, Shoji, and Momo had been added to their small little group. Naruto just had his face in a bowl of ramen, literally, eating and sleeping at the same time. He was slurping the noodles, drinking the broth, and snoring all at the same time. It was gross, but Mina was having fun with it, pulling Naruto's head out of the ramen, and switching him to another bowl of noodles, just for him to do a repeat of it all. Shoji nodded to him and raised his energy drink. They had kind of bonded over the Naruto rescue mission, so it made sense for them to sit at a lunch table together. I just wanted to ask, why did you all skip class yesterday? Momo asked them curiously. The real reason she sat with them actually was to find that out. They had missed the entire school day, so it made sense for her to try and find out why. Food vanished into Toru's mouth. We were totes saving Naruto from a freaky yandere girl. It was super scary, but it really made me feel like a hero when Naruto thanked us. Toru couldn't help but almost shout that too loudly. She yelped when Naruto opened an eye and glanced at her, before he closed his eye and fell unconscious again. We got in a lot of trouble. Toru mentioned with a rub of her head, that nobody could see. Mina grabbed Naruto's wallet and walked up towards the pro hero in charge of lunch, before she used his money to buy another 2 cheap bowls of ramen. Coming back to the table, she sat one down in front of Naruto and dunked his head in it. She put the next in front of herself and dug into her own lunch. Naruto had offered to allow them all to use his wallet to get themselves lunch today, since some of them needed to recover their stamina after getting burned or stabbed saving him. I see. That explains why UA is in some legal trouble. Momo whispered to herself. She had heard the news mentioning parents wanting to pull their kids from UA, since apparently a super strong student had been kidnapped and tortured to near death. She had been curious who could have been kidnapped, and it would explain why Naruto was so tired. Actually, if it happened after Naruto fought the guy that tried to blow himself up, then Naruto could have been captured when he was already half dead. There was silence for a moment. So, what made all of you want to be heroes? Toru asked to try and restart a conversation. I want to be like Crimson Riot, the fearless hero. Kirishima proudly proclaimed almost instantly. Crimson Riot was the hero he had looked up to since he was a kid, and he had always tried to style himself after the man. Crimson Riot was why Kirishima chose to dye his hair red, and spike it up like he did. He's the coolest. Kirishima stood up and howled out. He got some looks for that. Retro. I've always been athletic, and I have flashy looks, and a strong quirk. It only makes sense that I try to become a hero, right? Mina didn't really so much choose to become a hero, so much as becoming a hero just felt right to her. She didn't really know what she wanted to do, so becoming a hero had just made sense, and she liked helping people a lot. You shoji? Mina asked their quiet giant. He thought about it. I never thought on it, it was expected of me I guess. My father was a hero. Who is your father? Toru spoke up over him, and Shoji didn't seem to have a problem answering the question. My father is Kakashi. My quirk is actually a mutation of his quirk, and my other's quirk. He's not a very well-known hero. He retired from hero work to raise me. Shoji didn't have much to say. His parents never married, but they stayed together. His mother was a grocery store worker, while his father had retired from hero work and got an office job, so that they could raise him without his life being in danger. Oh, you mean Copy Wheel. He's an old-school hero. His quirk let him predict and copy martial arts and how villains move. Momo was a little excited to hear about that one. She actually had a signed picture of Copy Wheel when she was taken to a hero convention by her mother as a child. I wanted to be a hero, so I could put my quirk to good use. Momo used her quirk when she noticed that Mina had forgotten chopsticks, and she made a pair for her. With my quirk, I can help people in almost any situation. It doesn't make sense for me not to become a hero. Momo furthered her own explanation. With a quirk like her quirk, she would be wasting her potential by doing anything else but being a hero. Blue blue blub. Words Naruto, words. Mina corrected him with a nudge to the side. He pulled his head out of the bowl, before he looked up at all of them. I just want to help people, so that when they see me, they feel like everything is alright. I wouldn't be at this school if having a license wasn't required by law for heroes nowadays. Naruto then put his head back in the ramen bowl, and forced himself back asleep while eating. Kirishima got up, and grabbed Naruto's wallet, before he went back up to get something more to eat as well. Naruto was paying for all of them. How about you too? Speaking of food, I noticed the other day, but you eat a lot Yororozu. Toru pointed out as she looked at Momo's plate, which had more food than Mina and Toru combined. Momo didn't seem to mind being interrupted by the girl, and just nodded. She showed off her arm and pinched it, showing a small amount of fat there. I want to be a hero, so I need to stay in shape, but my quirk requires I eat a lot. The more I eat, the more material I can produce with my quirk. I try and stay athletic, and keep a good figure so that I can fight and keep my flexibility, but I also try to maintain a little body fat. Momo's arms were slim, but they had muscle to them. She also had a small layer of fat to them, but it was hard to notice if you weren't looking. The same applied to most of her body, but thankfully, her quirk condensed the fat on her body and allowed her to multiply the fat she did have to a certain degree as she transformed it. If I was like a Shido, and had no fat, then I would become malnourished by my own quirk. Momo looked at Mina's body. The girl didn't have any visible, non-boob, fat on her body that wasn't needed. She was a purely athletic girl, and because of that with her balanced diet, her physical conditioning was amazing. Way better than my quirk, all I do is get hard. Kirishima hardened his arm to show off. He was jealous of those with useful and flashy quirks, since they usually blew his quirk out of the water in a peel. He was okay in a fight, but he wasn't useful in a bunch of other situations. Mina covered her mouth. Dude. Phrasing. Mina, does he realize? Momo, he said that at a table with women. Shoji, that's what she said. Toru shouted, unable to resist anymore with all the talk of getting hard. She rolled onto the floor, giggling her head off at her own joke, and Kirishima's face became as red as his hair when he realized what he had said. A security alarm started to go off. Instantly, students started to freak out and try and run towards the exits. Several students were knocked out of their seats, and were swept up in the rush of students. Then again, most of the students were with the general courses and business courses, so they weren't trained in stuff like hero work. UA wasn't just a hero school after all. All of you, shut up and calm down. Instantly, a giant fox appeared in the middle of the students, a fox whose head reached up to the ceiling. Naruto, having been knocked out of his seat, transformed and towered over the students around him. His deep and booming voice taking command over the cafeteria instantly, his annoyance reaching all of them quickly. Ow! 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 Toru, Momo, Shoji, Kirishima, and Mina were all on Naruto's head, being pressed up against the ceiling while Naruto made his anger known to everyone. It's just the news reporters breaking into the school, look out the windows, the teachers have it handled. All of you get back to your damn seats. Naruto watched as the students fearfully went back to their seats. Threats from a giant fox weren't something to be taken lightly. Naruto sighed and lowered his size, transforming back, and dropping his friends back onto their feet. Ayo. Whoops. Didn't realize they were on his head when he transformed, since he had been knocked to the ground. Transforming must have put them on his head, and thus pushed them into the ceiling. Maybe now he could get some sleep. Chapter 26. End. Chapter 27. Start. The bus. Not tired anymore? Mina asked Naruto teasingly as she sat next to him. Both of them were in costume. Most of the class was in their various costumes actually, except for Izuku surprisingly. Apparently, in his battle training with Bakugo, his costume had gotten heavily damaged. Naruto actually wished he had seen that fight, since it sounded like it had gotten pretty intense. Naruto was awake and alert now, something that hadn't been the case an hour ago when he had been sound asleep in class. Feeling better, big baby boo? Mina teased him. Bonk. Mina pouted and held her hurting cranium in pain, since Naruto had given her a swift bonk to the head for her teasing. He smiled down at her though, nodding his head as he looked at everyone, and he nodded at Momo. Sorry Yororozu, Uzumaki, from now on neither of you will be placed together on teams. After going over your abilities and the results of your testing, the two of you are far too good together. It doesn't matter what training we do together now, the two of us aren't going to be on a team. Momo thought as she nodded back to Naruto. Getting ready for rescue training had been something that had reminded her of what Shota had told them near the beginning of class when they were boarding the bus originally. Apparently, their stats were just too good for them to be placed together for team trials. Single quote. Honestly, that makes me want to form a hero team with him when we graduate, if even teachers think we are an unfair matchup. She could imagine it in her head, kind of, how well they could team up. The results their teaming would create, and how effective they would be against villains, would just make the matchup make sense. Naruto didn't think on that though. He didn't like this. Single quote. I've got a bad feeling about this training. Naruto felt something was off about the air. Something in his head was going off, an animal instinct telling him that danger was approaching? He didn't know, but he didn't like it. This was the first time in his life, despite the number of times he had been in danger, that he had actually felt something horrible was coming. What did you say, Frogface? Hey, don't insult frogs, jackass. Frogs and toads are a part of the same family, and I won't have you using frog as an insult. Naruto stood up and pointed at Bakugo with a frown. He used to have a pet toad before it died, and he just had never gotten around to getting another one. Naruto looked at Tsuyu, who seemed unfazed by the comment from Bakugo in general. You're absolutely adorable, Tsuyu. Naruto looked at the smallest girl in class, the only one who was sitting on all fours in her seat at the moment as she got the compliment. Toru nudged Mina. What, he's just telling the truth. Mina had no issues with Naruto complimenting a cute girl when it was true, and he wasn't trying to flirt. Tsuyu didn't blush or anything, and she didn't seem offended or pleased. She just accepted the compliment with grace. You wanna fight, fucktard? Why bother? Naruto seemed a little confused why Bakugo wanted to start a fight. The guy's quirk was explosion. He sweat an explosive liquid from his palms, and his explosion so far had been weaker than what was usually required to do any real damage to him. Naruto's fur was highly flame-resistant in his stronger forms, so flames usually didn't do a ton of damage to him at their lower heats. The guy wasn't stupid, he was high up in the classroom, so there was no way that he wasn't aware of the difference in their strengths and weaknesses. Stop fighting. Bakugo was forced to sit back down when Shota turned around and glared at the two of them. Naruto shrugged and sat down too, not really angry to begin with. He just didn't like it when people were insulted because of things they couldn't help. Even more if that thing made you look like a cute frog. Naruto glanced at Mina, before he thinned his lips. Suddenly, the lump in his chest, and the one in his pocket, felt a whole lot heavier. I hope I don't regret bringing it here to train. Naruto thought to himself, patting his side. At the USJ, holy crap, this is amazing. The USJ was filled with multiple biomes that were host to different type of disaster relief situations. Visible from their current location, there was a landslide zone, a flood zone, fire zone, and multiple other places that would train heroes on dealing with different types of rescue scenarios. Standing in front of it all was their guest lecturer for the day, a hero wearing a fully body spacesuit, a very bulky one, the Space Hero 13. Naruto had never actually been to this place before, so this was even a new experience for him as well. I hope I don't get sent to. That feeling, it's getting worse. Naruto didn't like it. The hairs on the back of his neck were raising up, he felt a pit in his stomach, and he didn't know why he felt something really bad was coming their way. Even against villains, his danger senses never went haywire like this, so why now? Naruto felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears, he wasn't able to hear the teachers anymore. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and he wished he could pinpoint it. It couldn't be 13, despite the fact that his quirk was black hole, it can suck up and tear apart nearly anything. And you've used it to save people all over. Izuku commented, and suddenly, the heartbeat in Naruto's ears stopped. The world returned to him, but instead, he had a voice in his ear. Ochako was nodding her head in obvious excitement to see 13 in person, the happiest smile on her face. Run. A voice spoke to Naruto, and he looked for the source, but nobody was saying anything to him. My powers could easily kill, and for some of you, that's true too. In our world full of superpowers, we regulate the uses of quirks, and it might seem that is good enough, but one mistake, one uncontrollable quirk, and people die. 13 explained, and silence fell over the students as they listened to the morbid words. The words struck a chord with Naruto, and several others with quirks that could easily kill, but for once Naruto didn't think about his mother. Run, it's coming. The voice spoke again. What is this voice? And this what happens when I'm about to lose control? Am I losing control of my? No, it has to be something else. Naruto forced the thought he was losing control out of his mind. Why wasn't anyone else noticing something was wrong? During Aizawa's fitness test, you learned your own hidden potential. With All Might's battle training, you learned how dangerous your quirks are to others. This class will show you a new point of view, how you can save lives. Because your powers aren't meant to hurt, they are meant to help people. 13 gave them a short bow. That is all, thank you for listening. He's awesome. It's here. What is that? Naruto looked down towards the ground far below them, and he saw a spiraling black mist forming in front of the fountain. Naruto's statement brought attention to it, and others started to notice it too. The only person who noticed it at the same time as Naruto was Shota himself. He saw the mist become large enough to form a portal, and people started to come out. At first, a man covered in hands came out, then it happened. Escape. A large figure, even larger and bulkier than All Might, appeared out of the portal with other villains. He had scars on his arms, and his brain was completely exposed, with his mouth being a sharp beak with rock-jagged teeth, and a jet-black body. The voice went absolutely haywire, screaming at him to run away. The second Naruto laid eyes on that one villain. Those are villains. Shota got ready for battle. Everyone run. Get out of here as fast as you can, that big one is dangerous. Naruto shouted at his fellow students. Run. I'm going to die. Naruto transformed up to his two-tailed form as jumped over the edge of the platform, sailing down towards the one who was setting his instincts off. Naruto ignored literally every one of the villains as they ran up the hill towards him. Naruto upped his size all the way up to his four-tail form, and curled up into a ball, rolling down the hill and running over as many villains as he could. Naruto ignored the thought that he was going to die, and charged straight towards the dangerous one. That thing. It's a monster. If anyone fights it, they're going to die. I need to take it down, even if it kills me. Naruto glanced out of the side of his eye, and saw that Shota had joined in on the battle. When he got to the bottom of the hill, Naruto saw that a large black mist had formed at the top, where he had been, but he forced himself to believe that the others were safe. If it was just a portal, then they were being sent somewhere else. Somewhere away from that thing. Well, looks like the first dead kid is coming to us all on his own. Maybe a dead fox will bring out the symbol of peace. Naruto transformed back to the two-tail form and slammed fist as hard as he physically could into the black thing's body, and he wasn't even knocked back by the blow. His body got a little bigger as he absorbed the shock of the attack. Naruto felt the attack before it could connect, and he dodged a flurry of close to 10 fists. He had to transform back to his normal form just to become small enough to dodge all of them. Naruto ignored the blue-haired bastard, though he wasn't being ignored in return. He didn't pay attention, but the one covered in hands looked at Naruto wearing his costume with a look of genuine surprise. Shock-absorbing quirk? Naruto transformed back and slashed him across the chest with his claws. If his fists weren't going to work, then he was going to have to use his claws to make this monster bleed. Surprisingly, Naruto's face had blood splash on it when the creature stepped back for a moment, claw marks slashing down its chest. Only moments later though, the marks healed and it looked right back at Naruto. And a regeneration quirk. Naruto took a fist to the stomach, and blood came from his mouth. He was sent flying through, so fast that his body broke the ground when he hit it, and he continued to fly. You can't beat Nomu. Not only does he had shock absorption, and you would have to really rip him apart to beat his hyper regeneration. He was made to kill All Might after all. You can't beat him, Naruto-kun. Gak. Naruto puked blood and undid his own transformation. He hits her hard as Uncle does. He's got strength quirks too? This guy. The only way to have multiple quirks is. Naruto continued to puke blood, before standing up and wiping the blood from his lips. That guy just said his name? Naruto-kun? Nomu, this guy has the monster fox quirk, don't hold back even an ounce of strength. The seeming leader spoke as he pointed at Naruto. Naruto stood up and got ready to fight. I'm not letting you touch my classmates, and I'm not letting you even think of fighting All Might. I'm going to. Naruto shouted out as he heard the voice try its hardest to stop him. Run. Live. Fight to my last breath. Naruto transformed, and he took one calming breath. He was fighting an enemy on par with his uncle. Foolish student. You need to leave the. Shota arrived on the scene, and Naruto's eyes widened with joy. This guy is as strong as All Might. Even if you erase his quirk, your body isn't strong enough to fight him. Help me. Naruto shouted as he ran at Nomu. Naruto had an ally now, even if his ally was pissed at him. Shota was surprised at Naruto's statement, but ran after Naruto. Fists collided with faces. Shota's eyes glowed red as Naruto was sent flying by the punch, and he erased Nomu's quirk a split second late. Throwing his scarf out, Naruto powered down and grabbed it, being flung towards Nomu. You need to run, this is too high level for you. Shota said, as Naruto kicked Nomu off of his feet. He was grabbed by his own though and slammed into the ground. A real hero puts their life on the line, even when they can't win. Just erase his quirk as long as you can. Naruto started to trade blows with Nomu as fast and hard as he could. The leader of the villains glared at Shota and rushed towards him, distracting him long enough for Nomu to punch Naruto with his full strength. No cheating, this is one-on-one. He really is as strong as my uncle, this feels just like a 100% punch. Naruto nearly had his lights knocked out of him. Naruto took 5 more punches as he was still flying from the last one. Getting slammed into the ground by a 6th punch, Naruto was pretty sure every bone in his body was broken now. Nomu grabbed Naruto's arm, and yanked on it, gripping it with all of his might. Snap asterisk, fuck. Naruto shouted in pain as his arm was crushed. He was then picked up, and slammed into the concrete again. Then again. Uzumaki. Looks like that is one student dead. Brings a lot of shame on the symbol of peace, huh? The villain leader jumped back and avoided Shota, while Nomu stood up and started to punch Naruto more. He's just rubbing salt into the wound now. I really expected more from a monster fox. What? Nomu was blasted as massive amounts of blue flames rushed out of the hole in the ground, roasting him and sending him flying. A massive figure started to grow out of the hole. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shota's eyes saw a number of tails continue to grow and grow, as a large, bloody orange fox came out of the hole and continued to grow larger. His size didn't stop growing, and the number of tails didn't stop. 6, 7, 8, 9. He's lost control. Shota didn't like the looks of the situation. This Nomu had just beaten Naruto into losing complete control. Standing taller than ever before, giant red eyes looked down at all of them. Easily over 100 feet tall now, a giant fox with the aura of a demon, glared death down everywhere. Fox. Blue flames gathered in Naruto's mouth, and he leaned down so that he was looking over Nomu. Quote. Fire. Naruto spewed the flames down. The flames consumed everything in their path, burning all that they touched to ash. The villain leader's eyes widened. Nomu wasn't immune to fire, since that wasn't an ability All Might had, so he wasn't given a power to make him immune to it. Nomu was turned to ashes. Raw. Naruto slammed his hand into the ceiling, and broke a hole in it. His fist then swung and smashed a building to pieces. He spewed flames at the ceiling, burning a massive hole in it. Naruto glared everywhere, looking everywhere for the being that hurt him so much. Red eyes took delight in the destruction that his body caused moments later. Naruto's transformation ended when Shota turned his eyes on Naruto, and erased his quirk as quickly as he could. The monster fox quirk was born when the gigantification quirk and nine tails quirks fused, and it's been passed down, but his mother didn't use foxfire. She used illusions when she rampaged. Shota saw the leader of the villains running away from him. He was scratching his neck while running, right towards the villain who had created the portals. Nomu is dead, it's game over for us this time. Shota had to keep his eyes on Naruto though. Naruto waking up and rampaging again was now the worst case scenario. That villain, Nomu, had been created to kill All Might, and had beaten Naruto so badly to the point that his quirk had forcefully rampaged. There are still dozens of other villains everywhere, and students battling them. Shota had to defeat all the villains around them, before he could go and help the other students. The biggest threat was gone, but all of the students were still in danger. Shota saw a small white ball fall out of Naruto's pocket, and roll on the ground next to him, but he didn't pay it any attention. Instead, he just went to work. There were villains to beat. Chapter 27. End. Chapter 28. Start. Blood. A lot of blood. That was what 13 saw when he was finished taking down most of the villains in the area he had been in, and went to help Shota deal with the most dangerous threats that had been in the middle of the building. He had seen the giant fox that had appeared very shortly, and while it had been frightening to see that, he had tried to finish what he was doing as quickly as he could to join. Since he was a rescue hero, it had taken him a lot longer to defeat his villains than it would have taken Shota to do it, but thankfully he had the help of several students who left the building to go get as much help as possible. What happened here? 13 asked his fellow teacher. The man didn't look happy. Quote. The villains created a hero that could defeat All Might. They came here with a plan. They were organized. The thing was a monster, and had multiple quirks. While Naruto fought that monster, I was distracted by their leader. Shota explained what he knew. He had captured all of the villains that had been in the area, and had tried to get as much information out of them as possible. He was also trying to keep Naruto's vitals stable without moving him, since he wasn't in a fit condition to be moved right now. With what happened, his internal damage had to be severe. No doubt he had head trauma, and all of his bones were broken. Not to mention his arm was crushed and bent out of shape. It took everything he had to keep Naruto stable, and he wasn't a hero that was very good with medical skills, so this was a little bit of a challenge for him to try and do. What he wouldn't give to have Recovery Girl's power right now. He controlled his quirk? 13 had seen the giant fox appear and shrink down. That was a good sign that Naruto had taken control of his previously believed, uncontrollable quirk, and tamed it to defeat an impossible villain. Quote. He rampaged. Nomu, the monster, beat him to near death, and it pushed him over the edge. I'm afraid of what would have happened if I hadn't been here. Everyone could have died. Shota had been picked as Naruto's teacher for this very reason. To end any rampages that could happen as early as possible while Naruto learned to control his quirk. The villain's leader and the portal guy both got away. I should expel him. Shota knew that was something he had the power to do, and something he had done many times before. Yet, it wasn't right. He had seen the fear on Naruto's face when he charged into battle, before it had been replaced by acceptance. This student, this boy, had charged into this fight with the full knowledge that he was running to his death. He had done what many heroes weren't capable of doing, and while completely foolish, he had placed the lives of others before his own. Quote, "You won't? No, I'm not going to praise him for risking his life. But the only reason he did it was so his classmates could run away. His actions were those of a true hero, and he might not have ended up like this if I had fought alongside him." Shota thought on it some. Naruto had a point. If the two of them had teamed up, then Naruto could have beaten Nomu without risking so much in the process. Shota used his scarf to wrap around Naruto's torso, and tied it tight enough to stop the flow of blood. He himself, Shota, would have lost to Nomu in a fight, quirk or no quirk. But if the two of them had worked together, Naruto's powerful body, and him erasing Nomu's quirks, could have been the key to a quicker, less bloody, victory. 13 went to Naruto's other side, and he looked at the white ball on the ground for a moment. "This is his?" 13 asked, and he got a nod in return. "Damn Naruto. Those villains must have been hardcore. I've never seen you bust out of that many tails before, or breath fire." Kirishima, with Bakugo behind him, both started to run towards their direction. They weren't the only ones though, several other students with minor injuries started to show up towards them as well. So far, the only ones who were showing up were Todoroki, Izuku, and Tsuyu. Izuku and Tsuyu having been sent to the flood area, while Bakugo and Kirishima had been sent to an area together, so all of them had been rather close to the middle when it went down. Todoroki had just finished the cannon fodder villains sent his way quickly, and rushed to help with the middle area. Shota cursed under his breath. The sight of their injured classmate wasn't something they needed right now, and considering UA was on thin ice, the fact that villains got into the school and a student was placed near death, again wasn't going to be great for them. Thankfully, since Naruto was in a small crater, they hadn't seen him just yet. "Students, everyone quickly go and help your classmates. Help should be arriving soon. Eraserhead and I have this area, Naruto." Kirishima had seen into the crater, and he jumped into it without a second thought. "Naruto. Dude, you're okay, right? These wounds won't keep you down." Kirishima cheered Naruto on as he landed next to him. He was about to shake Naruto awake, but he was stopped by Shota before he could touch Naruto. "This wasn't a joke. Go help the other students. Naruto is in critical condition. If he's moved carelessly, it could put his life in more danger. Here, you're his friend. Protect this for him." Shota grabbed the Hoshi no Tama and gave it to Kirishima. The boy looked at his friend laying on the ground, before he regretfully nodded his head. Naruto would have trusted Kirishima with guarding it for sure. Tsuyu hopped into the crater, and she looked at Naruto's condition like Kirishima. "Todoroki, can you make a stretcher out of ice?" Tsuyu asked the boy, and he looked a little surprised to be addressed directly like that. He nodded though, and placed his hand on the ground, making a flat chunk of ice in the general shape of a stretcher. Shota looked at it, before he figured out what Tsuyu was thinking of doing, and he nodded in approval. They could safely move him on a stretcher. "Eraserhead, let's move him onto it." 13 gently moved Naruto's head and shoulders, while Shota moved his lower back and legs. The two of them worked together to gently move him onto the ice that would slow his bleeding and help him. "This girl. She has a calm head on her shoulders." 13 thought as he looked at the frog girl with some appreciation. "She would be a good rescue hero." "Deku, Kirishima, can you two carry Naruto? I know it's a lot to ask, but I can carry that ball." Kirishima. "Todoroki, you're strong. If you'll protect us while we carry Naruto," and Bakugo, "Shut it, frog face. I'm strong, so I'm going to protect the front. Icy hot can guard the back." Bakugo shouted at her, and she took it in stride. Kirishima looked at the small ball, before he handed it over to Tsuyu. Opening her mouth, she swallowed it whole. Seeing as she could spit out her stomach later to get it out, she was the best suited to hiding something that seemed so important. Everyone got into position and they started to move out, with Tsuyu running next to the stretcher. "I'm going to help in the mountain rescue area. A lot of villains looked like they were over there." 13 knew where he was going to go, and Shota nodded his head. He would go to another hurricane area, and find any students who were teleported there. With Naruto, what kind of opponent was he fighting? Kirishima whispered as he looked at Naruto's horrible condition. Even when Naruto took an explosion to the chest, and spent a full day getting stabbed repeatedly, he didn't look as bad as he did. He had never seen somebody beat his friend in a straight fight either, so he had just assumed that Naruto had won the fight and somehow knocked himself out by losing too much stamina. How far are we away? Kirishima wasn't in the lead, so he wasn't privy to that knowledge just yet. Boom asterisk, all these villains are damn cannon fodder. Bakugo blasted 2 villains who were running at them away, completely clearing their path towards the exit doors. Open the doors, losers. Bakugo shouted at the few classmates who hadn't been teleported from where they started. Mina and Ochako were the only ones left, the others having gone to get help, or help the other students with their villains. Mina. Shit. Kirishima couldn't let Mina see Naruto in this condition, she would freak out. He wasn't the only person who had this thought though, because Ochako had glanced and saw Naruto, and she looked at Mina before the girl could see her boyfriend. Ochako covered her mouth in shock when she was able to lay eyes on how bad of a condition their strongest classmate was, but she quickly blocked Mina's view. Uraraka? Mina asked in confusion when Ochako made sure to block her view of Naruto as much as possible, as the rescue team ran by them and out of the exit doors. Who was that they were carrying? It's okay, I know Naruto is accident prone. He must have just broken his legs or something. I'm a hero too, I can handle seeing him get hurt. Mina pushed her aside with a forced smile. Ochako stood in her way again, making sure she didn't see it. Let's go help the others, I'm sure Naruto will be fine. Ochako didn't sound sure, and that worried even Mina. She frowned, but she nodded her head and forced herself to turn around and prepare to go and help the other students. Before they could though, most of the pro-hero teachers rushed through the doors and started to run towards the different areas as well. Leading them was an angry All Might. All Might wasn't smiling, the fury on his face was palpable. Who did that to one of my students? All Might shouted as he jumped, and knocked the girls over with the shockwave from his powerful legs. Neither of them had ever seen him so angry, nobody had, and suddenly, Mina looked towards where they were carrying Naruto. You two, take this chance to get out of here. We'll finish up with the villains here, and rescue your classmates. We'll have the police talk with everyone later to get your stories on what happened. Nezu spoke as he hopped down from a hero's shoulder, and motioned to the girls to get moving. As hurt as the young man looked to be passing him, he must have been in a tough fight. Nezu gave credit where it was due. Then again, even before Tenya had gotten to the teachers, they had seen the massive blue flames shooting into the sky. It was hard to miss that, to be honest. All of the pro-heroes got ready, and split up to go to each of the areas. They had students to save. Chapter 28. End. Chapter 29. Start. Gotta hurry and check on the others. Suyu hopped, her fastest way of running, out of the main school building so that she could go back to the USJ, and continue to help out with anything that they could have her do. After seeing the others off, when dropping Naruto off for emergency healing, she instantly made herself scarce. The others were strong enough to protect Naruto from further danger, but she was needed elsewhere. She wasn't sure what help that she could be, but it didn't hurt to go and find out from the pro-heroes if they had anything from her. She didn't want anyone else to be hurt. Her body froze, and her eyes dulled when she felt control of her own body give way. She hit the ground roughly, and though she wanted to wince in pain, her body's controls were no longer her own. She couldn't even twitch her eyes to see who was behind her. All she heard was the tapping of a cane against the ground. A villain. Child. In your stomach, you have something very important to me, something that is very useful for my plans. Come with me, child. The male voice, she decided, spoke to her calmly, calculated. Suyu couldn't turn around and see him, but she felt his hand on her shoulder. Somehow, he had been able to sneak onto the school grounds without an alarm going off. Or he was one of the villains who had joined on the USJ raid. She tried to open her mouth, but her body moved against her will as she walked with the man. The man tossed a small coin-like device on the ground in front of them, and it exploded into a small portal. Don't worry, you won't be harmed, as long as you don't fight. Of course, your mind might not be strong enough to fight my control. The man walked her towards the portal. He wanted what was in her stomach. Naruto's ball thing she promised Kirishima she would protect. No. Have to fight. Have to. Suyu was led through the portal. Chapter 29. End. Chapter 30. It was silent. Sitting down next to Naruto, his nephew, and seeing the teenager still unconscious, down on a bed with an oxygen mask over his mouth, and his arm in a sling, combined with the bandages on his head, it hurt Toshinori when he saw it. All he could do was hold Naruto's unbroken hand for support, not support for Naruto, support for himself. He had snapped when he saw Naruto being carried on a stretcher, and had gone into the USJ ready to destroy whatever villain had did this to him. Normally, all Naruto needed was Recovery Girl's healing kiss and he would be usually completely healed. Not this time. Before she could even use her powers, they needed to perform actual surgery on Naruto, to remove bone fragments from his lungs, set the bones in his crushed and twisted arm back into place. They needed to check his organs to make sure nothing else was vitally wounded, and thankfully, the most vital organ that had been injured had been his lungs. The rest of his organs didn't go undamaged though, and it was pure luck that the scan showed Naruto wouldn't suffer from any brain damage. He lost control. Shota spoke to Toshinori seriously. Thankfully, only 13 and I know he lost control. When I was asked by the police, I told them Naruto's desire to protect his classmates gave him temporary control over his quirk, and he passed out because of his injuries. Shota continued with a sigh. He had told the police a pretty big lie, but considering Naruto wasn't to blame for losing control, it wouldn't be good to punish Naruto. His quirk had acted on its own as a self-preservation mode. It had happened when Naruto had already been knocked out. If Naruto hadn't lost control, Nomu could have continued to rampage, and he could have killed a lot of people before Toshinori arrived to fight him, and that would have been a horrible thing to deal with. Toshinori bowed. Thank you. Has there been any word from Tsuyu Asui? Toshinori tried to take his mind off of Naruto. He had to, otherwise he wouldn't be able to face himself when he went home. All of the students were accounted for and, other than Naruto, uninjured. The only student who was missing was Tsuyu, and the only injured was Naruto. They had been looking for Tsuyu for close to 8 hours now, and there was no sign of the girl. Even those with powerful noses said her scent just vanished completely, right in the middle of the school grounds, and the other scent with her wasn't like the scent of any of the villains who had attacked. It was frightening. Shota got a text, and he stood up when he looked at his phone. I just got a text from Midnight. She found a trace of Asui. You stay. If villains come back, you're the most suited to protect the school right now. Shota wrapped his scarf around his neck and prepared to go and get his student back. He looked at the location again, before he left the room, and he saw Mina was sitting outside of the room. He didn't say anything to her, as much as he would have liked to, but the tears in her eyes showed that she needed to speak with somebody. You can go in, I'm leaving now. Shota told her as he quickly passed by. All she did was nod and get up, heading into the room he just left. With Midnight, this is odd. The girl's quirk forms state that she can secrete a slime that is slightly poisonous. But what is it doing all this way from the school? Midnight was a little confused as she worked with her fellow teacher and pro-hero, Hound Dog. The one who had actually found the trail of slime, and he contacted her to make sure it was from the right student. The two of them had tracked down the traces all of the way down to a park, and considering it was so late at night now, it was doubtful that Tsuyu had been here to play around. Not a girl her age, and not at a park for little children like this. What do you think, Hound Dog? Midnight asked as she looked at the traces on the slide, bending over and examining carefully. She got no response as Hound Dog sniffed around, trying to find where the tracks went. They stayed in the park. Odd. I can smell her scent here at the park, but I don't smell it either entering or leaving. Hound Dog didn't know what to make of that. His nose had never lied to him before, but he didn't smell anyone else coming to the park, or leaving it. Midnight went to the bushes and looked into them for anything else. I sent a message to Eraserhead, he should be here soon. Let's see what else we can find in the meantime, Hound Dog. Midnight stood up and turned around. She looked to her fellow teacher, only to blink and pull out her whip when she didn't see him standing. Her free arm went to her white bodysuit, preparing to rip it. Hound Dog, you better not be pissing on a tree. Midnight tried to make a dog joke to flush her ally out. She was greeted by silence. Something was off. A small ball dropped out of the air, and landed on the ground in front of her. She ripped her suit, and pink gas started to fill the area, coming out of her skin. Her scent quickly surrounding her. In response to that, the small ball at her feet opened up, and all of her scent started to get sucked up into the ball. She ripped more of her suit off, and instantly her scent was sucked up into the ball again. The ball made a beeping sound, before it changed colors from pink to blue, and started to release a blue gas. She covered her mouth as quickly as she could, but her vision started to fade, before her body gave out on the ground. Hound Dog, Quirk, Dog, and Midnight, Quirk, Somnambulist. Pro heroes of quite a high standard, far exceeding the average hero for sure. Though, your original costume would make you far more suited to being in my collection. This scent. That little ball cancelled out my scent, and then released a scent that can knock me out. How? Midnight passed out. The next day, where am I? Naruto's eyes weakly opened as he winced, the morning sun shining right in them. He felt horrible, his entire body was in a ton of pain, and breathing was difficult for him. He felt like he had gone 10 rounds with his uncle in his prime, and had taken a good amount of hits. What was worse, was Naruto felt an uncomfortable weight right on his stomach, which didn't really hurt, but made it harder to breathe. Trying to move his body, he found himself unable to move very much, even moving his hand was a challenge for him. All he could do was lean his head, and see that Mina was sleeping with her arms and head on his stomach, her eyes red and puffy, showing that she had been crying. On his other side, he saw his uncle sitting there, awake with a cup of coffee in his hands. This was Recovery Girl's emergency treatment room? It's okay, you can go back to sleep. You did it, you saved your classmates, but next time, can you save them without worrying me so much? Toshinori wasn't going to yell or scream, or even trying to tell Naruto not to save people. He would be a hypocrite if he told Naruto to stop risking his life for others. He tried to smile down at Naruto, and Naruto tried to remember what had happened. Nomu, that thing that he fought, all he remembered was getting smashed into a crater, then everything went black. Naruto nodded a little. Ooh, morning Yagi-san. Naruto, you're awake. Thank God. Recovery Girl said it would be days before you would wake up. Mina screamed when she saw his open eyes. She jumped onto him, and wrapped her arms around his neck as weakly as she could. Tears of joy were streaming down her face. She rubbed her cheek against the side of his head, and Naruto gasped and winced in pain. Recovery Girl took her cane, and smacked Mina on the butt as she walked in. Down. Sorry. Mina apologized as quickly as she could, holding her hurting bum with both hands. The elderly woman stood up on a chair, and looked at Naruto's condition with a critical eye. Is he going to be okay? Mina asked quietly, like she was trying to keep her words a secret. Getting a good look at Naruto again, she could see that Naruto wasn't in great condition. Recovery Girl nodded. How stubborn you are, never ceased to amaze me. I'm amazed you were able to survive with those injuries, and kept fighting despite of them. Now, you wake up days before you were scheduled to. You must have questions. Recovery Girl removed his breathing mask, and allowed Naruto to take a breath of fresh air. She kept it close by just in case Naruto wasn't ready to have it taken off just yet. Naruto's mouth moved, but he didn't have the strength to speak. Mina and his uncle looked like they wanted to cry when they saw him so weak. Gathering up as much strength as he could, and going beyond that, Naruto managed to sit up with a weak grunt. Toshinori helped him with a hand on his back, and Mina placed a hand on his chest. What? Where is it? Where is? He's unconscious again. Mina didn't know what to make of that question. She saw that Naruto was already asleep again, having used up all of the strength he had regained. She was pushed out of her chair, and Toshinori took, as the healing hero started to make them leave. Can't I stay with him longer? I'm his uncle. I'm going to start another healing for Naruto, and he's going to need more rest. With any luck, he should be able to move around again by tomorrow. Until then, you two are making him push himself too far to make you happy. Out. Recovery Girl lectured both of them as they were forcefully pushed out of the room. The door was closed, and locked, behind them. Mina and Toshinori didn't know how to react right away to that, but Toshinori let loose a sigh of relief. Naruto was going to be okay, physically speaking. Toshinori and Mina looked at each other, before they nodded. If anything, the fact Naruto was being so stubborn meant that he was going to be okay, and they just needed to give him time to rest. You head to class, I know you'll be late, but you might want to head to the locker room and use their showers. Toshinori told her with a smile. She had been in her hero costume since yesterday, and had worked up a sweat when the villains had appeared. She deserved a nice hot shower before going to class, but she had been so worried about Naruto making it, she had stayed by his side all night. He didn't want to say it out loud, but the girl was really good for his nephew. She had been nothing but loyal to him when he was in great need, even if he wasn't awake to realize it. She nodded her head, and stared to walk off just as Toshinori's phone started to ring. Strange, he didn't recognize this number. Mount. Lady office, as you can see, we're still in the red with that last stunt. It might really be best if we move out of the city. No, I want to make it big, and to do that I have to be in the city. Mount Lady complained as she listened to one of her very few workers explain to her how bad their financial situation was at the moment. With her gigantification quirk, even she knew she was best suited out of the city. That being said, she still set up her office in the city so that she could bask in the praise and glory that came with being a big city hero. There was a beep. Mount Lady, there is an investor here to see you. Do you want me to send him in? Yes. Mount Lady shouted into the mic, eyes dazzling. She had the brightest smile on her face, because in all of her short time as a pro hero, she had yet to have any investors come and visit her. The closest thing to that was when she had put out her line of haircare products to make extra money, and she met up with stores to decide which places could carry it and produce it. See, we're not bad off, investors means money. Now, scoot out, I want to see at the desk and look official. Mount Lady started to rush the man out of his desk. If she was sitting behind a desk, she would look a lot more business-worthy. She was happy she was wearing her costume right now, it would send off the best impression. Her advisor exited the room, at the exact same time as a man in a black suit, with slicked back black hair and black sunglasses came in. He had a completely neutral expression and face. Everything about the man was very neutral actually. He had a briefcase though, and he sat down across from her. Mount Lady, it's a pleasure to meet you. Always a pleasure meeting an investor. So, are you the one investing or do you have a boss? And let me just say, I am open to negotiations. Mount Lady acted as cool as she could. She could negotiate how much money she could accept, and if she was going to have to undergo small style changes, or start mentioning certain businesses and items for sale. She dropped her guard, and made herself look as naive and innocent to the business world as possible. She leaned forward and pressed her breasts together using her arms. He didn't even glance at her breasts sadly. I come as a representative. My boss is quite the fan of heroes, and your rising popularity has attracted his attention, as well as your powerful quirk. There will be no need for negotiations. If you will be willing to meet my boss, he has prepared. The investor spoke to her, and opened up his briefcase. Mount Lady saw the money in the case, and suddenly became very lightheaded. 1 billion yen in cash, with an additional 1 billion yen if he believes you have potential. The investor spoke calmly and clearly. Mount Lady felt like she was going to have a heart attack when she saw the amount of money, and heard that it was only half of what she could be getting out of this. That was enough to take her out of the red completely, and put her far into the green. Deal. Mount Lady was drooling so much that when she shouted that, she accidentally spewed all over the investor's face. He paid it no mind. Very well, shall we? The investor stood up and reached into his pocket, putting out a small coin. He tossed it on the ground, and it opened up to create a portal above the coin. Well, let's not keep your boss waiting then. Mount Lady walked briskly towards the portal, her greediest smile possible on her face. She slapped her cheeks as she walked through the portal, and though it was strange that portals existed, it just might be because of a quirk she didn't know about. She put on a pleasant smile, before she blinked. She was looking at Eraserhead, Midnight, and Hound Dog, 3 pro heroes from UA, and they were standing across from her with blank looks on their faces. She noticed she was standing in the middle of what looked like a cathedral, with a painted ceiling. Lined on the walls were large pods, with heroes' names below each pod. In the middle of the room, behind the heroes, was a large pillar that went up into a hole in the massive ceiling. Heck, the walls were also lined with windows, revealing nothing but white outside of the windows. Odd. Holy crap, that's your original costume. Mount Lady looked shocked when she saw Midnight wearing her original, even more super revealing costume that lacked the bodysuit underneath it. One slip, and her breasts would become super exposed. This type of suit had been banned, thanks in part to Midnight herself. She blinked when the investor walked up behind the heroes. Mount Lady, I'm pleased you could join us. The investor pulled out a phone, and a voice came out of it. She thought she was meeting the guy in person? Wow, this is a pretty nice place you have. If you weren't investing in me, I would say this was a competent villain hideout. Mount Lady joked, seriously, as she glanced at the expressionless heroes. Add her to the collection. Damn it. Mount Lady looked at saw the ceiling was tall enough to use her quirk. Grinning, she was shocked when instantly, her quirk was erased and she was unable to use it. She covered her mouth when pink gas filled the area from midnight, and even though it was better against men, Mount Lady covered her mouth and nose, preparing to fight them off without her quirk if needed. They're under some kind of mind. Hound Dog slammed a fist into her stomach, knocking arms away from her mouth as she gasped, breathing in a large amount of scent. She suddenly felt woozy, but maintained consciousness for a bit longer. One of the pods in the room opened up, before she was captured by Eraserhead's scarf, and thrown into the pod. Erasing quirks, a fast and powerful dog, and portable knockout gas. I knew adding you 3 to my collection first would be a boon. Now, return to your pods, I want to keep you preserved. The pro heroes all obeyed the commands as more pods in the room, with their names, opened up. Just as Mount Lady's pod closed, and her body was placed in status. With Class 1A, man, Aizawa-sensei is sure late. Ochako spoke with a wide smile. This was giving her the chance to finish up the homework she forgot to do with all the excitement from yesterday. She had a wide smile on her face, because she was almost done and the teacher was 15 minutes late for class. Several other students were just hanging around, talking with each other in small groups, while Tenya and Izuku were with her. It's inappropriate for a teacher. Tenya spoke with a frown, adjusting his glasses just to show his annoyance. Izuku waved his hands. He must just be exhausted from yesterday. Izuku mentioned as the doors opened up, and Mina tried to silently enter. He's not here. Izuku told her with a good morning wave. Mina sighed in relief. Mina, how's Naruto doing? Kirishima screamed as he ran towards her. She yelped when he grabbed onto her and started to try and physically shake the answers out of her body. She was soon crowded by other students that were curious about the answer, and trying to get it from her. Speaking of late, Momo whispered with a furrowed brow. Where was Suyu? He's going to be okay, he just needs some more healing, and some rest. Mina saw everyone who was friends with Naruto at this point sigh in relief. Kirishima even rubbed the joyful tears out of his eyes, hiccuping in a dramatic way at the safety of his friend. She was rubbed by Kirishima and Toru, both of whom seemed to be bawling, glad at the news. Shut up. That bastard is too strong, he beat a guy made to kill All Might, as if he would die that easily. Bakugo snapped at them for their crying. He had the most unpleasant look they had ever seen on his face, as if it had physically hurt him to say those words out loud. Yet, even he had to give credit where it was due, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to challenge himself and push his own limits further. Fucking bastard. Hiding so much power. I'll beat him, I'll beat all of them. Bakugo thought with a clenched fist. Mina hugged Toru and Kirishima, before she quickly let go of them. An enemy made to defeat All Might. Izuku thought about that for a moment, before he blinked. That seemed impossible to him. He would have to ask Naruto about that when he saw him next, and get his opinion. Okay class, everyone to your seats. Everyone was surprised when a different teacher came into the room. Cementos, their modern literature teacher, came into the room instead of Shota. It was odd for them to see the man outside of his own class actually. Sir, where is Aizawa-sensei? Kyoka asked with a raised hand, the first among them who was willing to voice her thoughts on it. Cementos looked at her. He's resting right now, but he'll be back as soon as he's ready to teach again. Don't worry, we're sure he's in no danger. Cementos then proceeded to start giving out the lessons. With Ryuko, seriously? Can't I enjoy my day off without some villains deciding to attack me? Ryuko wasn't exactly dressed for a fight, wearing a swimsuit for starters since she was at the beach. She just wanted to relax, and suddenly she was met with several masked men surrounding her. All of them with slicked back hair, black suits, and briefcases. They had white masks covering their faces, and were standing politely, with guns pointed at her. The life of a hero was a difficult one. Thankfully, her swimsuits were made of the same material as her clothes, so she could transform without worrying about destroying them. Going up to her dragon form, she looked down at the men and gave them a glare. Guns wouldn't hurt her in this form. She's using her quirk, open fire, go for her wings first like the boss said. The men opened their briefcases and pulled out ammo for their guns. Switching to the preferred ammo, Ryuko swiped at one of them. The one she swiped at shot her elbow, and a small blue ball impacted her scales, exploding and covering her elbow in a thick case of extremely cold ice. The men started to fire at her wings, weighing them down heavily with thick ice that started to form on her. They iced down her legs to the ground, freezing her in place. She wasn't even given a fair chance to struggle before her neck was completely covered in ice. The cold quickly started to sap her strength, as her eyes started to close. She transformed back into human form, and slipped out of the ice, hitting the ground as a shivering mess. The men fired at her again, and froze the lower half of her body. 2 men changed ammo, while she laid on the ground helplessly. She was shot in the neck by 2 small darts. She was out cold moments later. Pro hero, Ryukyu captured. Transporting to base. The man's cold, neutral voice spoke as they captured the woman. With Endeavor, "Oh, so you bastards think you'll be able to fight ME?" Endeavor shouted as he summoned forth flames, and threw them at one of the men. He was surprised when the man's suit wasn't even burned as he walked through the flames. A light green force field flickered around the man, all of the men around. They walked and formed a circle around Endeavor, as quickly as they could, before they opened up their briefcases and dropped thick metal plates on the ground. Endeavor had just been in his office, when these men had broke in and interrupted him. When he told them to leave or be fried, they simply told him his resistance was useless. "We know all about your hellflame. And without oxygen, flames cannot live. Without heat, they have trouble starting." The seeming leader spoke, they all looked the same. I. Endeavor suddenly found he couldn't breathe. All of the air in the room was quickly sucked into the plates. He formed a quick flame, but the room's heat was drained as well. Without heat or oxygen, his flames quickly died into nothing. He ran at one of the men, hoping to beat him and break his machine. He hit a barrier preventing him from going a step further, as all of the men drew closer to him. "Your popularity, status as a hero, and strength are all remarkable. The master wishes to add you to his collection." The leading suit spoke as Endeavor was shot with darts, his strength even more quickly fading away as he was grabbed. Single quote. "They created a plan unique to capture me. They analyzed my fighting style and my quirk. Who are these? Bast." With those as his last weak thoughts, Endeavor passed out. The men grabbed him, and packed away their capture tools. Endeavor, captured. With Gang Orca, "We don't wish for violence, a peaceful surrender is the best course of action." Underwater. Gang Orca was underwater, looking all around him as men in black suits surrounded him, surprisingly agile underwater like him. They were holding briefcases, that they were opening to reveal strangely shaped guns. A hero never surrenders, that the go for them to attack, and Gang Orca felt like his head was splitting open the second they pointed their weapons at him. He writhed and shouted in pain as extremely powerful sonic waves assaulted his head harder than he had ever experienced before. He couldn't see straight as they attacked, all of his senses went haywire, before his eyes rolled up into the back of his head. 2 of the men swam over to him. His eyes rolled back to where they were supposed to be, and he punched at the men. He was then assaulted by more sonic waves, only this time, the men near him switched their ammo and shot capturing ropes at him. His legs and arms were tied up, and he was forced to bear the mind-rending pain. He struggled for several minutes, but even he needed air. He passed out, and a man placed an oxygen mask on his face, before injecting him with a knockout drug. Gang Orca, captured. In the mountains, don't worry, the wild pussycats are here to save you. We'll get you out of there in a jiffy. The team of 4 heroes all went towards the collapsed cave. They had been called and sent to rescue several people who had called for him with a cave-in, and being a mountain rescue team, they had been the first team that had been chosen for this job. Tiger started to use his body to grab tree trunks and move them out of the way. Pixie Bob reporting for duty, "Let's clear away this earth." Pixie Bob shouted as she placed her hands on the ground, and the collapsed cave started to fix itself, boulders crawling out of the cave and into the open. It moved slowly so that no more cave-ins would happen. "Don't worry, we'll save you soon." Mandalay thought as she sent out thought waves into the cave. She would reassure the victims until they were saved. They were a well-oiled team, and Ragdoll looked around everywhere excitedly, but she was blinking in confusion. "Weird, I don't see anyone in the cave. No living or dead people anyway." Ragdoll didn't know what to make of that. With her quirk, she could see 100 people at a time, even if she didn't have her eyes on them directly. Yet, she couldn't see any people in that cave. Tiger started to squeeze through the cave-in, before he was gone from their view. Okay, be careful in there, Tiger. Pixie Bob, try and build up support structures, make them a good exit. Mandalay gave out instructions to her teammates. As the leader of the team, she had to make sure everything was good to go. Ragdoll furrowed her brow. She still couldn't see any people. I found them. Tiger's voice was heard loud and clear, which only caused Ragdoll to furrow her brow even more in confusion. People her Quirk couldn't see? Perfect, and Pixie Bob is nearly done making an exit. Are they injured at all? Mandalay called out her question. Seeing that there was enough space for her to go in as well, she traveled into the cave after Tiger. I'm coming in. Mandalay vanished into the cave after. Pixie Bob sent Ragdoll a thumbs up. We're Neanderthal. Pixie Bob made a joke, and Ragdoll nodded with a wide smile. Pixie Bob finished clearing out the cave-in, and with sunlight, Thai looked in and saw that there was nobody there. Not even Mandalay or Tiger were there. I don't see any people. Ragdoll stated, before a coin dropped on the ground in front of them. A portal opened up, and a small horde of men in suits came out of the portal before it closed, and the coin destroyed itself. I still don't see them with my Quirk. Ragdoll pointed out with more confusion. Pixie Bob jumped next to her. Get ready to call for help, we don't know what their quirks are. Pixie Bob was pretty sure she had a good idea what happened to their teammates. She prepared to use her quirk, and the earth under them stirred to her call. The men all opened up their briefcases, before they pulled out rods and stabbed them into the ground. Pressing a button on top of each rod, her control over the earth around her was instantly ruined. Electricity ran through the ground, and as she gained control over it, the electricity ruined her control. They had negated her quirk. We need to get out of here, and warn. Ragdoll started, but didn't get far into her statement. The men shot them with tranq darts, with the two women going down. The men surrounded them and tied them up, getting them ready for transport. Wild pussycats have been captured. After school, Class 1A, man, those villains must have taken a lot out of the teachers. Aizawa-sensei and Midnight were both missing today. I hope Suyu is feeling well. Sato commented as he sat down with Siro. School had just ended, and everyone was getting ready to go home. Ojiro nodded. It's certainly odd, but with the villain attack yesterday, things must be pretty hectic for them. Ojiro commented in a normal way. He tried to be understanding of the teacher's situation. They were all lucky they didn't end up like Naruto, or worse, dead with the villain attack. It was hard to imagine what it was like for the teachers to have to balance pro-hero work with teaching right now, not to mention they could have been injured as well. It was a lot to take in. So, Jiro, want to get a latte or something? My treat. Denki offered Kyoka with a grin on his face. She looked at him with a raised eyebrow, not seeing why he was offering this to her. She shook her head. I just want to go home and relax, I'm still a little shaken from yesterday. Kyoka denied him swiftly. She wanted that latte, but she wanted to spend time with her family winding down as well. He pouted and nodded. Why did that never work? Mina, want to hang out with me? Toru asked with an upbeat jump. Mina waved her off with a smile. I'm going to go home and change clothes, then I'm coming back here to visit Naruto. I want to be there for him when he's recovering. So see you guys later. Mina used that as her time to leave, finishing packing up all of her stuff. Sue her, she wanted to be there for her injured boyfriend, instead of just hanging out. As much as she wanted to spend time with Toru, some things had to come first. Tenya stood in front of Izuku. Midoriya, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, I wish to ask for your assistance with something. Most of the class was doing whatever they could to try and not think about what happened yesterday, though some of them didn't seem the least bit affected either. Strangely enough, Todoroki was actually smiling a little, which never happened in class. I feel like something good happened. Todoroki thought to himself with a smile. He didn't know what happened, but something good happened. Mina, can I visit Naruto with you? I have something I need to ask him about. Momo asked Mina with a concerned expression. Something weird about yesterday, a question she really wanted to ask Naruto, and she was sure that Naruto wouldn't answer it if he was able to walk away from her. Now was her only chance to ask the question. Sorry Iida, but I actually wanted to speak with Naruto about something too. Ashido, Yororozu, can I join you too? Izuku kindly denied Tenya, and he walked over to the two girls. Mina didn't really have a problem with it, and Momo wasn't in a position to judge him for asking, seeing as she asked the question too. Surely, Naruto would be willing to answer their questions. With Naruto, gotta get stronger. Naruto grit his teeth in pain as he did push-ups with a single finger, his broken arm still in a sling. After his healing, which he didn't know how many times she had to heal him while he was out, he had been able to move his body once more. I'm not going to lose like that again. Naruto honestly didn't remember anything but his own defeat. Defeat. Not being beaten while training with Ryuko or his uncle, no, a real defeat against a villain. It wasn't a non-serious issue, he had actually lost a fight. A fight with the lives of others on the line, and it was just amazing that nobody else had gotten hurt. Child, you're trying my patience. I leave for 5 minutes, and I come back to see you exerting yourself. Recovery Girl stated as she lectured Naruto the second she came back into her office. She knew this much was going to happen as soon as Naruto could move his body. Naruto moved too much. Gah! Naruto let out a pained shout, and he fell to the ground. Your body is still incredibly injured right now. Just because you can move, doesn't mean you should. As soon as you recover more stamina, I'm going to heal you again. Get in that bed, and stay there until I tell you to. Recovery Girl told him as she sat a bowl of ramen at the table next to his bed. It was a food that was great for restoring stamina, a food Naruto loved, so she would give him this. The quicker his stamina was restored, the quicker he could be healed to a better condition. She frowned to herself as she looked at her computer, and saw she was getting a flood of emails again. Naruto stared down into the ramen's broth, seeing his own reflection. Single quote ... I can't hear that voice anymore either. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. Damn. These drugs are making it hard to think. Naruto rubbed the side of his head. He was on so many painkillers, and he could still feel pain, that it was extremely hard for him to form most complex thoughts. He felt like he was forgetting something important though. Bastard. What? Naruto asked when he heard somebody walk up next to him. He was surprised when he saw Bakugo, but he didn't make anything of it. He saw Bakugo glaring, normal, and he saw the boy look like he had swallowed a lemon. Also normal for him. He was a generally unpleasant person to be around, but it was surprising that the boy who seemed to hate him, was visiting him. Tell me something. A hidden location, ah. Look at this collection. I have Midnight in her debut costume. Eraserhead, a hero who stays out of the spotlight. Then there is Hound Dog, a popular hero with animal quirk users. Endeavor, the number 2 hero. And Ryukyu, the number 9. Not to downplay Gang Orca, or the wild Pussycats. And I have the complete collection for them. All these powerful quirks, added to his collection, and to be used as he saw fit. He had spent such a long time building up his massive fortune, using his own quirk to allow him to control others. With it, he was able to subdue a young man with a quirk that gave him near unrivaled intelligence. He had then spent years, quietly observing the pro-heroes with interesting or powerful quirks, taking apart their battle styles, and trying to locate any weaknesses in their quirks. Do you see Tsuyu? I can change the world, change it how I see fit. I don't want to have to hurt you. With the Hoshi no Tama that I got from you, I've been able to do great things. When the boy's mother died, I had thought I would never lay my hands on one of these. But alas, I couldn't have been more pleased when my sensors picked up one moving around in the open so freely. The man draped by shadows, wearing a cloak over his body so that Tsuyu didn't see his face, spoke as he held the white ball in his hand. Tsuyu was free from his control, but her hands were tied behind her back, and she was being dragged around on a leash like an animal. What use is that to you? It belongs to Naruto. All will be revealed in time. Until then, be a good pet and just follow your master around like an obedient creature. The man yanked on her leash and pulled her behind him, as she was forced to gaze at the growing collection of heroes the man was amassing. Tsuyu made sure to memorize everything she saw. The interior of this place was massive, and it was filled with such high-tech machines that she didn't know where to begin. She had also seen the man's robot army, the men in the suits, coming and going through those portal coins. They would leave to capture a hero, after getting suited up with the appropriate gear for their target, before they could leave. The heroes were almost always brought in with little to no injury, which was terrifying to the girl. This man wasn't a villain. He was a super villain. Why keep me around? Tsuyu asked, and the man glanced back at her. When my final machine is ready, I'll use this Hoshi no Tama to cleanse this world, and then I'll use my collection to create the perfect world. If I want to enjoy the perfect world, I'll need a lowly creature like you, to remind me how far I've come. Since you practically handed world domination to me on a silver platter, you will be the lowly creature I keep as a pet." The man coldly spoke to her, all of the niceties before were gone as he looked down at her. Despite what was thought, he had no interest in her body. She wasn't going to be used as a breeding tool for his new world, and she wasn't going to be abused either. She would just exist to remind him just how he had succeeded in creating the perfect world. A portal opened up. 2 more portals opened up. Ah, Best Jeanist, Ms. Joke, and Mirko. What amazing additions, please, quickly place them in stasis. Good work. The man was excited to see 2 more of the top 10 had been so quickly captured, while another excellent pro hero had been brought along with them. His plans were going as smoothly as possible, and none of the heroes had caught on to his plans just yet. Even if they did, it was impossible for them to track him down. He was using portals to make sure nobody could find the location of his base. Then again, his base was always moving, so not that they would ever find it, until it was too late. My friends will stop you, even if the pros can't. Suyu tried to sound calm, but it was hard. Seeing so many captured pros was horrifying. Why should I worry about some worthless, no-name students? I've created plans on how to capture every pro hero that is worth anything. Some children are nothing to me. The man dragged her along with him as they went back to his throne, and as she was forced to sit on the ground, he took the throne. A platform started to raise his throne up high into the air, taking them to the control deck. Suyu looked out into the blue sky. This wasn't good. Later, reports say that several pro heroes, including those of the top 10, are currently missing, and unable to be reached. If you have any information on the whereabouts of these heroes, please contact the police with haste. Nezu turned off the TV, with all of the teachers on his pro-hero teaching side, in his office with him. All of them had watched the news report the missing heroes. All of the heroes had vanished without a trace, which was odd on its own, and none of them were answering their phones, or responding to texts. It had become practically impossible to track them down, and the fact that their teaching staff was included in the missing heroes was frightening for them. It started when Shota went to check up on a lead for the missing Suyu, and it continued to spiral from there. What do you mean we can't help look for them? Vlad shouted as he slammed his fist into the table. They were being told not to do anything. Until we know more about this, we need to tread with caution. Every hero that went missing has gone missing without so much as a trace. For heroes like Midnight and Eraserhead it makes sense. But even Mirko and Endeavor were caught without signs of a fight. We're dealing with something we haven't dealt with before. Nezu placed his paws up to calm down the unruly teacher. As it stood, everyone was on edge. Midnight, Hound Dog, and Eraserhead weren't the only ones who had gone missing, even from their teaching staff. Ectoplasm, who had heard the report earlier than others, had gone to investigate, and he had already turned up missing as well. They were done by almost half of their pro heroes in their teaching staff. If I go, I can make quick work of this, Toshinori explained, but Nezu glanced at him. If they took Endeavor down without a fight, it makes sense they also know your weaknesses as well, and have created plans against you. If we lose you, we lose hope as well. This isn't the time to go rushing, we need a plan of action. As it stands, I doubt the villain has murdered them. Nezu tried to explain, but the teachers didn't like it. They didn't have to like it, what he said made sense. Toshinori cupped his hands together, and frowned to himself. The only teachers they had left were Powerloader, Snipe, Cementos, Vlad, and himself. 13 was out on an assignment elsewhere, and the others higher up weren't fit for battle. As it stood, they wouldn't be able to protect the students. Are the students in any danger? Vlad calmed down a little and asked. He had been wondering about it too. This entity seems to be targeting only pro heroes who hold a reputation, are well known, or have a strong quirk. The students' status as students seem to protect them from this. But I wonder if Suyu Asui going missing has any relation to this. Nezu remained upbeat as he analyzed all of the data they had so far. He didn't stay upbeat though, and frowned. So many heroes have been captured in such a short time, and we have no information other than guesses. If we make any unwise moves, it could spell the end for us. Nezu didn't like saying it, but it was rather simple. They were fighting an uphill battle right now. They all went silent as they digested those words. This wasn't good. With Gran Torino, the elderly man stood with an unimpressed look on his face when a group of men surrounded him in his own apartment. He glanced around at them all, before he smirked and prepared for a fight. My boss wishes for you to come peacefully. Peacefully is for villains and the dead, all go down with a fight. Gran Torino moved too quickly for any of them to see and kicked one of them in the head, knocking him into a wall, before he moved around and kicked 2 more. As he was kicking them around, 5 more of them placed small square devices with holes in them around the room. He kicked down 3 more of them in under a second, half of the villains knocked out with ease. He went for several more, but his quirk stopped working, and he could feel his airs popping. Single quote ... The room's air pressure. It's too low for me to use my quirk. So they came prepared. And they aren't human. Gran Torino saw the men standing up, the skin on their faces having peeled off to reveal robot faces underneath. They replaced their masks and covered their robot features, before they got guns out and aimed at him. They didn't look like normal guns. It seemed these people were very prepared to fight him. You're a relic of a golden age of heroes, our boss will value you greatly. You will be unharmed if you surrender peacefully. Gran Torino raised his hands up in surrender. Very well, but I'm hungry, I want something to eat before I go. Wait for just a second. Gran Torino's mind thought quickly as he was allowed to walk over to his fridge and microwave. Placing frozen food in the microwave, he accidentally spilled the ketchup. Ah dang it. I can't leave this place a mess, or I'll never be able to surrender peacefully. Gran Torino was allowed to clean up the spilled ketchup, just as the microwave went off. Smiling to himself, he placed his ketchup-stained fingers in the microwave, and after a few moments, he pulled out his food. He was allowed a few minutes to eat, before they opened up a portal, expecting him to walk in. Gran Torino, captured. Secret message, sent. You better be as good at tracking people down as your grandmother was Naruto. Gran Torino thought as he finished secretly typing a small messaging on the phone, hidden inside of his glove. Sending what he hoped was a decent text to Naruto, he willingly walked through the portal. He couldn't win this fight without his quirk, so he would entrust it to somebody he believed in. Somebody with a quirk that was nearly impossible to plan against. The unpredictable idiot. With Naruto. What the hell is this? Naruto looked at the text he had gotten from Gran Torino, with a confused expression. He was still sitting in his bed, but he had been given his phone by Mina, as she, Momo, and Izuku all stood around him. NRRD Jelp. What the hell? Mina looked at his phone. So you're okay? Momo asked him, glancing at Mina and Izuku, unsure if she could ask her question with the others around him. She saw Naruto nod, and she sighed in relief. You seem to be recovering well. Momo looked at him, and though his arm was in a sling, he was doing much better than she pictured him. Mina nodded. She was happy that Naruto was already able to move this much again. Getting multiple healings from Recovery Girl was having amazing results. Recovery Girl walked back into her office, and though she was a little surprised to see the other students, she made no comment on it. Thanks for healing Naruto, Recovery Girl. Mina thanked the elderly woman. Recovery Girl wasn't paying attention to her. Well, I can walk again, so I'm going to go and find my thing. Naruto said in the most confusing way he could have. Since he was sure the only ones in the room who knew what a Hoshi no Tama were him and Mina, it would be smart not to make that super public knowledge. Recovery Girl didn't even pay Naruto any attention when he got up and started to walk out of the room. Naruto locked eyes with Izuku. Your thing? Mina asked with a tilted head. A thing? I can make a thing. Momo then proceeded to make a small doll. She was sure that she could make a copy of whatever Naruto was missing. Mina grabbed Naruto and pushed him back into the bed, before she proceeded to jump up and sit down on his stomach. He wasn't moving. I'm not letting you leave until you're all healed. With your luck, the second you leave here, a supervillain will start raining fire from the sky from a flying fortress. Mina said the most strange thing she could think of. With Naruto's luck the last week, it made sense for something even more weird to happen. Then, you'll be right back here. So my butt is staying right here, and your butt is staying right there. Mina made herself comfortable on Naruto, until he got the hint and stayed in the bed. She was sure that this would keep Naruto in bed. He's going to. Izuku knew Naruto a little, and knew this wouldn't keep him in the bed. Naruto laid back and grabbed Mina, pulling her into the bed with him. Quote ... I need my Hoshi no Tama. It's on the move. I can feel it. Naruto whispered gently into her ear so neither Momo or Izuku could hear them. Mina's eyes widened when she realized that Tsuyu was the last person to have it, and right now, Naruto's life was still in danger if anything happened to that little ball. Not to mention, if they found it, they could find Tsuyu as well. I totally forgot, we had that date thing planned, ahahaha. Mina laughed nervously as she jumped up off of Naruto. Naruto nodded. Yeah, so we better go, and get ready. We'll see you guys later. Izuku, I don't know what you need to ask me, but if you have questions, try and answer them yourself. Naruto told his classmate, and he wasn't the only one that took the answer. Momo nodded her head, since she had a question too. She would go and think about it herself now. Izuku just nodded with a downtrodden look, and though Naruto wanted to help, Izuku had to learn to help himself improve too. You could be trained by 100 skilled trainers, but if you weren't able to improve yourself, then you were placing limits on your growth from the beginning. What was that about? Mina asked Naruto as they walked by. Naruto would tell her later. It's on the move. That thing is too much trouble. The second I get that thing back, I'm going to lock it up again. Naruto frowned as he thought on it. It was his key to unlocking the secret powers of his quirk, but at the same time, it was his biggest weakness. He had never intended for Tsuyu to get her hands on it. He would have preferred if Mina or Kirishima were holding onto it for him while he was knocked out. Actually, he would have much preferred his uncle over everyone else. Sadly, only a few people knew what it was, so he doubted that Shota knew how dangerous it was to leave with Tsuyu. He couldn't afford to leave his weakness exposed, even if it meant he was sacrificing a large amount of his potential. Let's hurry and find Tsuyu with it. Mina didn't like how much danger her friends were in. They weren't in a good position. Secret base almost complete. Soon, my precious army will finish constructing my cleansing machine. The man looked up at an incomplete machine with a smile. He had locked Tsuyu up in her cage, since this part of the base wasn't something she could see. He could just imagine placing the Hoshi no Tama into the machine, and finally powering it. He had already created his 15 core controllers for the machine, and he had them strategically scattered across his base. The machine was 55% complete, and he had begun constructing the second the location of a Hoshi no Tama was located and seen moving around. He had almost lost hope that he would never be able to go through with his plan, but everything was falling into place. After waiting for years, the wait was almost impossible to take. Not only would he have to wait for his machine to finish, but he needed to wait for the Hoshi no Tama to finish charging up the machine. He could have done this all years ago, but it had become impossible to use Kushina's Hoshi no Tama, or even her mother's Hoshi no Tama before her. Both of those had been shattered long ago, and even if he put them back together, it wouldn't restore their power. Boss, the machine's completion will be ready in an estimated 31 hours. Very well, and the charging time? The man asked his robot. 15 minutes. Then that is how long this world has, before the cleansing will start. Be sure to collect all of the heroes that are on my list before then. My new world will only accept the best, and the genetics of heroes can't get any better. I want a diverse gene pool at my disposal for cloning. The man gave his orders. He wanted all of those pods filled, and he wanted to begin the process of creating the next, perfect, generation of humanity. Using his hero collection as a genetic base for his experiments. The world had less than 2 days before he started to purge it. Understood. The man smiled. I have a, with Naruto, bad feeling about this. First Tsuyu went missing, and now everyone seems worried about something. And Ryuko won't answer her phone. Neither will Rumi, and she never rejects my calls. Naruto said as he tried to call anyone he could. Something was weird. Civilians seemed like they were in a state of unrest at the moment, and nobody was willing to say why. Did something happen while he was out cold? Something that freaked everyone out so much that people were getting off of the streets as quickly as possible. Why were people so freaked out? Who is Rumi? Mina asked as she pinched his cheek. Also, where are we going? Mina questioned further. Seeing Super Gramps, his text message is weird. I should check up on him. Considering how people are acting, and the weird feeling I have. Something bad is going on. This is like the feeling I got yesterday. Naruto mentioned with a frown. It was like the feeling, but there was no voice in his head this time. The feeling of imminent danger was bad enough. Mina was silent at the reminder of yesterday. Think a big villain is going to show up again? She wasn't sure she could handle that right now. They got to a small house, and Naruto walked inside using his copy of the key. Frowning when he right away saw signs of a fight, Naruto looked around. Super Gramps, you here? I smell burnt ketchup. The microwave. Naruto walked over towards the microwave and looked at the ketchup stain on the ground in front of it. The smell wouldn't be burnt though if it was just a stain on the ground. He opened the microwave, and he didn't see any ketchup there either. Mina looked into it, and because she was shorter than Naruto, she was able to see the top of the microwave. Ah, a message. What does "have been taken" mean? Mina asked, and she spoke the "I've been taken" in English, a language she wasn't super familiar with. A language Naruto was familiar with. "I'm calling my uncle," Naruto stated with a frown. With Toshinori, All Might, captured. Toshinori laid on the ground, clutching his side as his body was covered from neck to foot in a highly dense material that was so heavy, even he had trouble moving in it. The material kept growing tighter and tighter around him, and when he tried to use his strength to get out, all it did was loosen up and jump off of his body, before it would get right back on it. His phone started to go off, and one of the men destroyed it the second he noticed it. They surrounded him and placed him inside of a mobile pod. Not yet, I'm not. Going into his muscle form again, having been forced out of it, he broke free for a second. He managed to break out of the pod, and though he was free, it didn't last long. His quirk was erased. A portal opened up, and Eraserhead came through with an emotionless face. His quirk active, and forcing Toshinori to stop using his own quirk. Before he could escape, he was shot with the capturing gel that got him before, and a second pod was placed around him. All Might, captured again. The #1 hero, was captured. Chapter 30. End. Anyways, that's all for this couple of chapters. See you all later, bye.